Screw your heavenly tribulation. Why should I be struck down just because I'm breaking through to the golden core stage? Xinglong Kingdom, an apartment in Jiangbei City. A boy suddenly woke up from his dream, drenched in a cold sweat but was still muttering curses under his breath. However, because he got up too abruptly, he accidentally strained his back and the pain made his face contort in agony. Ouch! It hurts. However, upon feeling the pain, the boy suddenly froze. Wait, pain, that's not right. Wasn't I struck by lightning and my soul was scattered when I was about to form my perfect golden core? Why would it hurt? Thinking of this, he ignored his sprained back, quickly looked at his hands, and then groped around his body, even climbing up to the full-length mirror in the room to check himself repeatedly. Ultimately, he concluded, "This body looks exactly like my previous life and the life before that, only younger and weaker. I time-traveled again." Yes, again, this is Baiye's second time transmigrating. He vaguely remembers that during his last transmigration he was hit and killed on the spot by a dump truck with failed brakes, and then he arrived in a world of cultivation. In that lifetime, well, the beginning was pretty miserable too. Orphaned at a young age with no sister and no house, he unexpectedly unraveled the mystery of his birth when he was 2.5 years old and just beginning to develop his spiritual intelligence, gradually regaining his memories of his past life. It was precisely because of this wisdom from a modern adult, coupled with the fact that he was already 8 years old when his parents passed away, that he survived with the help of kind-hearted people in the village. One day, a mysterious immortal suddenly appeared in the village. This immortal claimed that he would carefully select some young children with cultivation potential from each village and guide them into a cultivation sect to embark on the path of cultivation. It was only then that he realized he had transmigrated to a world with a cultivation theme. Fortunately, after some testing, it was discovered that he actually possessed the spiritual root needed for cultivating immortality. However, the spiritual root within him was described by that immortal as a mixed spiritual root of the 5 elements, meaning that his body was a mixture of the 5 elements, which would inevitably make it very difficult for him to embark on the path of cultivation. However, the mixed spiritual root of the 5 elements is still a special kind of spiritual root, and that immortal gave him an opportunity to embark on the journey of seeking immortality and enlightenment. Unfortunately, because it is extremely difficult to cultivate mixed spiritual roots of the 5 elements, there is no instance, as in many novels, of a sect leader taking him as a disciple out of compassion. Therefore, like most new disciples, he had no choice but to start as a menial servant. However, unexpectedly for Baiye, this seemingly extremely difficult path of cultivating mixed spiritual roots of the 5 elements was actually not as difficult as he had imagined. Because of his mixed spiritual roots, almost all the elders and deacons in the sect who tested his talent deliberately skipped the comprehension test. But when he began to learn about cultivation techniques, he discovered that his comprehension was simply extraordinary, even though he possesses a mixed spiritual root of the 5 elements, which is known to be extremely difficult to cultivate. His own comprehension alone is enough to allow him to progress rapidly in his cultivation. Furthermore, in this process, he also deliberately strived to cultivate himself to the ultimate perfection at every stage and every level of cultivation on the path of immortality. Even so, his cultivation speed still far surpassed that of his fellow disciples who were also doing menial tasks. At the young age of 13, he had already achieved perfect foundation building. In order to conceal his abilities, he only applied to become an outer disciple of the sect 2 years later. But in fact, he had already reached the peak of foundation establishment by then. Since becoming an outer disciple, Baiye had begun to prepare to form a perfect golden core and become one of the 3 great prodigies of the eastern region, gaining experience and enlightenment outside the sect. After 4 years of honing his skills, he realized that his cultivation could no longer be suppressed, and he was already fully confident in forging a perfect golden core. Therefore, he decided to find a suitable place to try to break through to the golden core realm. But unexpectedly, because his talent was too extraordinary, he incurred the jealousy of the heavens, and thus the heavens were willing to send down a lightning tribulation to destroy him. Of course, for the sake of prudence, Baiye had already taken this into consideration. After all, in the history of the cultivation world, there were still many prodigies like him who had to undergo tribulation after reaching the golden core stage. The specific reason is certainly not some kind of divine jealousy. From the descriptions of those ancestors in ancient books, it may simply be a test for exceptionally talented individuals. Although the tribulation of lightning is terrifying, after passing through it, heaven will bestow rewards, and it is said that there are many benefits. Given his background and combat strength at the same level, he shouldn't have needed to worry about the heavenly tribulation. In his view, it was just a tribulation, something he could easily handle. But Baiye never expected that the first heavenly lightning strike, which was supposed to be a test of the heavenly Tao, would be so fierce. With his foundation establishment perfection stage strength, which allowed him to directly confront nascent soul cultivators, he couldn't even withstand a single lightning bolt and was instantly killed. He thought he was done for, but unexpectedly he time-traveled again. This time, it seemed like she had transmigrated into the body of someone who looked exactly like her, but based on Baiye's careful deduction, she realized that wasn't the case. This time it should be the same as the previous life, a rebirth through rebirth. It's just that the mystery of the womb was solved a little later this time, and it wasn't until now, at 19 years old, that I regained my memories from. Well, 2 lifetimes. The good news is that this time, he actually brought his cultivation level from his previous life with him, and after successfully overcoming the tribulation, he directly broke through to the mid-stage of the Golden Core realm. The bad news is that he can only sense that he has brought his cultivation level with him. For some reason, he can't use this mid-stage Golden Core cultivation level at all. However, there is some good news. This world is a bit abnormal, possessing extraordinary elements, so it seems we should be able to find a way to restore our strength. However, there is also bad news. The power system belongs to Western fantasy, mainly consisting of battle chi and magic, which has nothing to do with cultivation. Moreover, this world is not an ordinary Western fantasy world, but rather a theme similar to the invasion of an infinite flow game. 200 years ago, before the game's invasion, the development of this world was almost a carbon copy of the blue star of White Knight's first life, with no difference whatsoever. To understand the specifics, we first need to sort out Baiye's memories before she unravels the mystery of her pregnancy and regains her memories of her previous 2 lives. First of all, in this life, I am also called Baiye. I am 19 years old and have just graduated from high school. Due to family reasons, I chose to give up my studies. Both parents deceased, has a younger sister and a house. To explain the specifics, we naturally need to start with the previous game intrusion. It turns out that this world is called Sky Blue Star. If we go back in time to 2024, 200 years ago, this world is almost exactly the same as the Earth where Baiye lived in her previous life. Whether in terms of technological development, social structure, or global trends, they all exhibit a high degree of similarity and tend to be synchronized. Let's go back to the 15th day of the first lunar month in 2024, when a game called Origins was released. It rose to prominence at an astonishing speed and successfully defeated the then-dominant games such as Honor of Kings, the wildly popular League of Legends, and the once popular Genshin. It quickly became the most popular large-scale open-world virtual reality game at the time. The reason behind the huge success of the game Origins lies in its 2 core selling points: 100% realistic sensory simulation and multi-world strategy and story simulation. At that time, virtual reality technology was still in the theoretical stage, and for most scientists, how to upload simulated human sensory information into games remained a mystery. However, Origins miraculously overcame this problem and achieved this unprecedented feat. With this unparalleled advantage, Origins swept through nearly 90% of the game market with overwhelming force. At its peak, the game set a Guinness World Record with nearly 30 million players online simultaneously. Initially, whether they were seasoned players or newcomers to this type of game, everyone treated Origins as an ordinary game. At most, it's just a bit awesome, like a second or third world separate from reality. They plunge.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Plunged into these vast virtual worlds to explore their captivating stories. Face challenges from various powerful monsters and gradually increase your level and strength. But 10 years after the game's launch, countless mysterious and bizarre connection channels suddenly appeared between the game world and reality. At first, people were unaware of the existence of these passages, but as time went on, some chilling phenomena gradually surfaced. First, witnesses claimed to have seen monsters from the game slowly emerge from those passages. They were ferocious-looking, enormous, and exuded a nauseating stench. Then something even more terrifying happened. These monsters not only appeared, but also began to launch frenzied attacks on the surrounding environment and humans. Panic and chaos gripped the world in an instant. Fortunately, this time the changes in the game weren't just limited to the invasion of monsters. At the same time, people were surprised to find that all the players who had ever played the game had acquired all sorts of powerful abilities from the game. Some control flames, igniting raging fires with a mere incantation. Others wield light, leveling everything within 100 meters with a single slash of punitive energy. Still others can cleave mountains and cleave seas with a single sword strike, even slicing down incoming missiles from miles away. It was precisely because of the special abilities these players acquired that humanity was able to hold its own against the invasion of game monsters, and with the help of modern weapons, stabilize the situation. Since the monster invasion and the granting of game powers to players, a new era has begun. Because this upheaval originated from the game Origins, people have named this new era the Origins era. With the invasion of external forces and the rise of supernatural powers, the originally stable and orderly social structure has been gradually broken, and the world order is facing reconstruction and reshuffling. Those players who gained immense power from it gradually developed the idea that this world should be dominated and controlled by the strong. Therefore, when faced with invasion from external enemies, these players who have mastered the power of the game, instead of uniting to resist external enemies, they instigated bloody and brutal internal struggles. In an instant, the whole world was plunged into extreme chaos, with war raging everywhere and people suffering terribly. As time went on, this turbulent situation continued to escalate and worsen. Finally, Season 3 has begun and the global conflict has reached a fever pitch. Countries are almost bloodthirsty with each other, and even nuclear weapons have been used. Ultimately, after a fierce and brutal battle, only 29 countries remained out of the original 200 or so. If it weren't for the start of the first decade of turmoil at this crucial moment, when the invaders in various instance worlds began to intensify their offensive. Among them, a terrifying entity that is almost invincible may emerge, and many countries may continue to be mired in their civil wars, unable to extricate themselves. It was precisely because of the emergence of this almost insurmountable enemy that countries had to temporarily set aside their prejudices and hatred, stop the endless wars, and instead join hands to cooperate in dealing with the enormous external threat. Otherwise, this once prosperous world might have already vanished into nothingness amidst endless smoke and fire. After experiencing that invasion by a powerful enemy, people gradually noticed some patterns in the decades that followed. That is, every 10 years, an intruder whose strength far surpasses that of ordinary players will appear in the game. Because they are so powerful that it takes almost the entire world's players to defeat them, they are also known as world bosses. In order to effectively resist these periodically appearing and terrible enemies, all the surviving countries in the world have signed peace agreements and committed themselves to achieving a stable and harmonious development path. Nevertheless, because supernatural powers have always existed and influenced the social structure, the contradictions between classes have also quietly shifted. The antagonistic relationship that was once limited to the gap between the rich and the poor has gradually transformed and has been replaced by increasingly sharp and intense conflicts between the strong and the weak. However, in all the surviving countries, a belief began to take root. The strong possessed everything, while the weak could only cower humbly in the enormous shadow cast by the strong. This idea of merely surviving and clinging to life became unwavering in everyone's mind. As a result, society today seems to be driven by an invisible force, with almost everyone harboring the same goal: to become stronger, willing to pay any price to slay monsters, gain experience, and level up. Among the many countries, the Star Dragon Kingdom, which is almost 99% similar to Daxia, is the most unique. Because it shares the same system and philosophy as Daxia, even under such circumstances, order has remained basically stable. Since the game Origins invaded the planet Tianlin, people who wanted to obtain powerful abilities from those infinite flow-like dungeons had to continuously participate in so-called dispatch missions, which are essentially world dungeons. However, in the Star Dragon Kingdom, there is a most famous instance world called Eternal Sanctuary. This is a Western fantasy world with a complete system of extraordinary powers, such as magic and martial arts. Moreover, it is an extremely rare data-driven game world, where even if you die in this world, you will only lose levels instead of dying completely. Over 100 years ago, after a certain venerable one from the Star Dragon Kingdom cleared this instance world, the official authorities opened it to the general public. From that time on, even if the citizens of Star Dragon Kingdom no longer participated in dispatch missions with extremely high mortality rates, They could still enter the various beginner villages they had designated through a specific official login method to carry out their first dispatch mission. This world, with its official protection throughout, a complete system for improving one's extraordinary abilities, and where death doesn't truly mean death, holds immense significance for the advancement of all beings to extraordinary levels. However, the Origins game won't let humans exploit loopholes so easily. The game restricts the level of players who are not on dispatch missions. These players can only reach a maximum level of 30. Furthermore, the experience and resources they gain from killing monsters or completing quests will be significantly reduced. There are also many hidden limitations, which means that most players who rely on this method to level up will only be able to stay at level 10 or even below for their entire lives. Therefore, if you want to become stronger, you can only continue to participate in those dangerous dispatch missions to obtain extraordinary powers from other systems. Baiye's adoptive parents tragically died during a dispatch mission. Because they died while participating in a military raid, they were still considered victims by the state even though they were not soldiers. As a result, Baiye and his sister Su Li received a large sum of compensation from the military. With the pension and their adoptive parents' inheritance, Baiye and Su Li lived together for 3 years, relying on each other for survival. As Baiye gradually sorted through the memories in his mind, he clicked his tongue and said, "This world is truly complicated." Before he could finish his reflection, a knock suddenly sounded on the door in his room. Baiye frowned slightly, took a deep breath, and tried to bring himself back to his senses from the turmoil of his thoughts. The knocking interrupted the information he was sorting out, forcing him to temporarily set those thoughts aside. He slowly got up, straightened his somewhat disheveled clothes, walked to the door and slowly opened it. Outside the door, Su Li was standing there quietly. Su Li is petite and looks like a delicate little porcelain doll. Her long, blue-white hair cascaded smoothly down her shoulders, gleaming softly in the warm yellow light of the room, like the aurora borealis in the deep night sky. Her face is the typical innocent girlfriend face, with fair skin that looks like it could be broken with a touch, and her eyebrows and eyes are curved but also reveal a faint sense of aloofness. His eyes were a deep, dark blue, like twinkling stars in the night sky, or like a lake covered with a thin layer of ice, calm yet unapproachable. She was wearing a simple white shirt and a black skirt, which made her look very clean and neat. The cuffs were rolled up just right, revealing a small section of slender and shapely arms, every inch of skin radiating a creamy sheen. The length of the short skirt was just right, showing off her long legs. Beneath the black skirt were her slender and well-proportioned calves, with beautiful lines as exquisite as a sculpture. Su Li stood nervously at the door, stammering, "Brother, the school is organizing a group dungeon run next week. We need to buy items. Here's the list." As she spoke, she handed her a piece of paper. Baiye took the paper expressionlessly, his deep eyes revealing no emotion, but he gave Su Li a deep look. Baiye's younger sister, Su Li, is a year younger than him and is a senior in high school. She became a hunter player through the Eternal Sanctuary dungeon. Actually, Baiye and Su Li's relationship wasn't very good from a very young age. Ever since his adoptive parents brought him home, Su Li has always felt that this nominal older brother has stolen the love that belonged to her. After her adoptive parents died, she developed very serious mental health issues. According to the psychologist, it's likely a combination of autism and dissociative identity disorder. Not only did he dislike talking to people, but even his nominal older brother was someone he only exchanged nods with each other when leaving in the morning and returning home at night. The reason they knocked on his door to ask for money this time was because after their adoptive parents sacrificed themselves while exploring the dungeon, the lawyer entrusted their compensation to Baiye, who was already 16 years old at the time and had a relatively stable personality. Since then, Baiye has been responsible for everything from daily expenses to Su Li's professional equipment and items. After giving Su Li a brief look, Baiye glanced at the exorbitantly priced shopping list, nodded slightly, and said calmly, "I understand. These things will be ready for you by tomorrow at the latest. Is there anything else?" Su Li tilted her head slightly, hesitating as if to speak but still said concisely, "And my short bow, its durability has reached the critical point. The craftsman said it's been repaired too many times. Any more repairs and it'll be scrapped. I'll have to buy a new one." Baiye was taken aback but still replied, "Okay, is there anything else?" "No, I went to school." After saying that, she turned around without hesitation, her steps hurried, as if her brother behind her was some kind of monstrous monster that she needed to get away from as quickly as possible. As the other person's footsteps gradually faded into the distance, Baiye couldn't help but sigh softly. After closing the door, he slowly walked to the window and rubbed his temples, feeling a bit of a headache. The reason he was having such a headache was that Baiye had already sorted through all of his current memories. Only he himself knew that for the past 3 years, in order to ensure Su Lei's smoother path as a gamer, he had been giving her whatever she wanted. Even if the other party isn't someone who spends money extravagantly, the extraordinary equipment and items are simply too expensive. The 400 gold coins left by their adoptive parents after their sacrifice have long been used up. Perhaps Su Li still thought that her adoptive parents had left her a larger inheritance in addition to the pension, enough to support her through her career. But Baiyi was certain that, apart from this house, her adoptive parents had left her and her brother nothing of value. Although he knew that Su Li and he were not compatible in terms of personality and rarely interacted like siblings, she was, after all, his adoptive parents' biological daughter. Before awakening her memories, Baiyi secretly vowed in front of her adoptive parents' portraits that she would make sure Su Li grew up safely and smoothly, support her through university, and help her fulfill her dreams, in order to repay her adoptive parents' kindness in raising her. Therefore, even though he now possesses memories of 3 lifetimes, he still does not intend to break his promise and fulfill his vow. Only, Baiyi glanced at his game panel, and seeing the money column clearly displaying 11 gold coins, 46 silver coins, and 992 copper coins, he couldn't help but fall into deep thought. If I remember correctly, just the hunter's shortbow that Su Li needs to replace will cost at least 12 gold coins. Baiyi sighed. He never imagined that he, who had once been lawless in the cultivation world, would one day have to worry about money. If he didn't want Su Li to know about his family's financial situation, but also didn't want to break his promise, he would have to earn 10 gold coins within a week. 10 gold coins, converted into the purchasing power of the first-generation Blue Star RMB, are roughly equivalent to about 20,000 yuan. For a high school graduate fresh out of college to earn that much money in a week is practically a pipe dream. Unless, Baiyi's gaze fell on the dispatch missions section at the bottom of the game panel in front of him. As mentioned before, the dispatch mission gameplay in the game Origin is similar to the settings in most Infinite Flow novels. Players who perform well in dungeons can obtain various items and equipment from the dungeons. If these dungeon worlds contain certain extraordinary cultivation paths, players can also obtain other classes besides those in Eternal Sanctuary, such as cultivators, psychics, sorcerers, and mentalists. Although Baiyi was unsure how his cultivation level would be fully restored in this world, he was certain that if he could be matched with a cultivation-related dispatch mission instance, his cultivation level would definitely be restored. Moreover, dispatching missions is currently his only way to quickly earn money. With that in mind, Baiyi didn't hesitate and directly clicked on the dispatch missions section to start single-player matchmaking. Before that, he withdrew all the balance in his account and placed it on his bedside table. Even if she dies in the dungeon, this money will be enough for Su Li to live on for a while, and the house is worth at least a few hundred gold coins, which would be enough for her to complete her career path if she sold it. That's right, after experiencing 2 deaths, both of which were premature, Baiyi is now somewhat resigned to his fate, adopting a living is good, dying is fine too attitude. Although he wasn't sure if he would regain his memories in his next life after dying again, it didn't matter. He didn't care anymore. Currently, Baiyi is only level 10, which is much lower than Su Lei's level. However, most of the dispatch missions in the game Origin recommend a level of 11 or higher. Therefore, it will take him some time to match the dungeon world of this level. So, taking advantage of this brief moment, Baiyi opened his game panel to check it out. Nickname, Moonlit Sky. Occupation, Priest. Level LV10, 2820/3000. Elemental Channelings. Priest Basic Channeling Tier 0. Rank 0. Status Good. Elemental Affinity. Wood 39%, Water 37%, Fire 36%, Metal 34%, Earth 33%, Lightning 33%, Wind 32%, Light 30%, Dark 28%, Arcane 23%, Battle Aura 32%. The higher the elemental affinity, the higher the level cap, and the faster the cultivation speed. Factions and Talents. Tao Spirit Sacred Heart Mythical, Sword Heart Clarity Legendary, Mind's Eye Legendary. 57 feats omitted. Most of these are feats and talents not related to the physical body, derived from memories of the cultivation world. Professional Skills. Tier 1 Holy Light Healing, Beginner 23%. Tier 1 Holy Light Protection, Beginner 19%. Tier 1 Holy Word Shock, Beginner 16%. Tier 0 Meditation, Intermediate 49%. Tier 0 Magic Missile, Intermediate 36%. Tier 0 Healing Spell, Intermediate 31%. Tier 0 Focus Spell, Intermediate 26%. Tier 0 Mental Interference, Intermediate 22%. Tier 0 Magic Barrier, intermediate 15%, Tier 0 awakening spell, intermediate 12%, Tier 0 mental barrier, intermediate 8%. Tier 0 purification spell, intermediate 6%. Tier 0 dispel spell, intermediate 3%, fireball beginner 99%. Knowledge-based skills. Basic spellcasting, intermediate 34%, basic magical elements, intermediate 47%, basic elemental relationships, intermediate 36%. Basic elemental construction, intermediate 42%, basic elemental equations, intermediate 28%, basic magical applications, intermediate 32%. Basic magical logic methodology, intermediate 23%, basic magical analysis, intermediate 20%, basic elemental functions, intermediate 18%. Basic magic mechanics, intermediate 43%. Basic magical deconstruction, intermediate 27%. Skills acquired through learning extraordinary knowledge cannot be improved through experience points. Other skills. Basic swordsmanship, Grandmaster level 96%. Basic knife technique, Grandmaster level 78%, sword in 10 of sharpness, advanced level 86%, sword in 10 of slash, advanced level 77%, knife in 10 of sharpness, advanced level 69%. 239 items omitted, skills brought from memories of the cultivation world, most of which are unusable. Personal attributes. Strength 18, agility 25, constitution 18, spirit 30. Combat attributes. Physical attack 16-26, spell power 24-36, spirit power 26-38, physical defense 2-18, magic resistance 28-36, spirit resistance 728-962, movement speed 32-64. Health points 180-180, constitution x10. Spirit value 898-900. Spirit attribute exceeds limit. Calculation method changed to spirit times 15, multiple soul feet plus 100%. Mana points 342-342. Level 10 priest has 114 mana points. Mana source feet plus 100%. Spirit attribute overlimit plus 50%. Stamina 23-24, approximately equal to constitution attribute. Sanity 9600-9600. Current equipment, broken wood staff tier 0 normal. Task none. Money. 0, 1 gold coin equals 100 silver coins equals 10,000 copper coins. General experience points, 724 gained through kills and quests. Used to level up and improve skill proficiency. Potential points, 62 gained through training level and skill proficiency increases. Points 0, used for the lottery after reaching Tier 1, can be exchanged using general experience points at a ratio of 10:1. Regional reputation. None. Character affection level. Factional relationships, none. Game backpack 10 slots. Note, players start with 10 slots in their backpack. Expanding requires additional money. Expanding the first 10 slots costs 1 to 10 silver coins. Slots 11 to 20 cost 12 to 30 silver coins. Slots 21 to 30 cost 34 to 70 silver coins, and so on. Other features. Tasks expandable mail expandable forum expandable friends expandable chat box expandable map expandable. System settings expandable. This is the game panel of a player in the game Origins in this world. Baiye is from Xinglong Kingdom. In his second year of high school, he was assigned to become a player in the Eternal Sanctuary dungeon world. However, before he could even enter the game, he received the devastating news of his adoptive parents' sacrifice. He knew that if he used the pension money from his adoptive parents for himself, his current level would definitely be higher than LV10. But for the sake of his adoptive parents' only daughter, he resolutely gave up this path and left all the money to them. Furthermore, Baiye had already planned out his class before entering the game. The game, Eternal Sanctuary, features 5 initial classes: Warrior, Shieldbearer, Mage, Priest, and Archer. The Mage class is the most expensive, so it's definitely not an option given my family's financial situation. Warriors and Shieldbearers often need to charge ahead and face life-threatening dangers. Although death in Eternal Sanctuary only results in losing a level in the real world, death means real death. Baiye wasn't someone who feared death, but he couldn't die before raising Su Li to adulthood, so those 2 dangerous professions were naturally ruled out. Of the remaining priests and archers, after careful consideration, Baiye chose the priest. Although priests have the lowest combat strength among all classes of the same level, they are almost always the first to be protected in team battles. Moreover, unlike other professions, even if a priest is of a low level, as long as they know a healing spell, they can make money wherever they go. Based on these considerations, he ultimately chose the profession of pastor. In the Eternal Sanctuary instance world, aside from the initial free entry to the Star Dragon Kingdom, each subsequent entry requires a fee. Baiye considered that, apart from this time, he might not have many more opportunities to enter. So when I first entered the game, I didn't do any quests or join other players' groups to kill monsters and gain experience. Instead, they sought out a professional mentor from the very beginning to learn the methods of elemental cultivation. Yes, in addition to the traditional methods of leveling up by fighting monsters or completing quests, there is also a cultivation system in Eternal Sanctuary. However, although the cultivation path is not subject to system-level restrictions or other limitations, almost no player would consider this method of leveling up. Because leveling up through cultivation is just too slow. Take Baiye and Su Li for example. Su Li is a year younger than him. She has only spent a year and a half since entering the game and has already reached level 13. Moreover, her level is relatively low among all her classmates. Baiye has been cultivating for 2.5 years, and he is only level 10 now. Even the lowest level student in Su Li's class is level 11. However, Baiye does possess talent. Leaving aside the absurd specialties and skills he brought with him after awakening memories of the cultivation world. Just by looking at his dense list of knowledge and professional skills, it's clear that I wasn't just anyone before. For the past 2 years, he has been diligently studying basic magic knowledge. So where did they learn this knowledge from? Well, it's quite a coincidence. Baiye's adoptive father is an elemental ranger and her adoptive mother is a mage. Furthermore, my adoptive mother had been an avid reader of magic books for a long time, so her study had a large collection of such books. Knowing this, Baiye chose the path of self-study to become a priest. Soon the system displayed that the match was complete, and Baiye's figure instantly disappeared from the room. Ding, player Moonlight Wanderer, has been detected as having initiated a mission and has been teleported to the mission location, Eternal Night Lost in the Mist Manor. Dispatch location: Eternal Night Lost. Task type: survival task. Mission mode: single player. Recommended level: LV10s. Task duration: 8 hours. Mission brief: you are a servant at Black Manor. Recently, a series of horrifying events occurred at the manor. Several servants disappeared one after another, and all the remaining servants except for you have fled the manor. Mission objective: find the truth behind the manor disappearance case before dawn or successfully escape the manor. Basic rewards: 400 EXP, 360 silver coins, 1 random F-rank treasure chest. Before he could even regain consciousness, Baiye's mind was flooded with a long string of mission information from the game system. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying on a simple wooden bed in a small, dark room filled with a musty smell. He subconsciously touched his wrist, only to find that the bracelet was gone, replaced by a rough servant's uniform. Following the general strategies he had learned from the game forum's mission dispatch section, Baiye immediately checked his physical condition. He stood up, walked to a broken mirror in the corner of the room, and carefully examined his current appearance. The man in the mirror had a white face, with features that were about 70% similar to his original self, except that his skin and hair color had changed. Looks like they directly changed identities. Baiye stroked his chin, lost in thought. In the instance, according to the rules, players cannot view any information on the panel other than the inventory. Therefore, Baiye did not attempt to check by opening the panel to confirm whether his physical condition had returned to the level of an ordinary person. Instead, he closed his eyes and tried to mobilize the magic power within his body. Soon, he felt the faint magical elements in the air resonate with him. Very good. Although the elemental composition of this world is much simpler than that of the origin world, at least I can still use magic, and my physical attributes are no different from before. He raised his hand, and a faint light gathered at his fingertips, illuminating the dimly lit room. However, the light only lasted for a few seconds before it dissipated. The dissipation of the light did not mean that the world had suppressed his magic, but rather it was Baiye's attempt at using magic. He frowned, realizing that his mana recovery rate was extremely slow, 80% slower than in the Eternal Sanctuary starting village, and about 60% slower than in the real world of Azure Star. I don't know if it's because the world is inherently like this, or if it's just because of this particular instance. With such a low mana regeneration rate, I guess I'll have to use it sparingly. He sighed, secretly planning his next move. Baiye's entry into the dungeon this time was certainly not unprepared. In fact, even before awakening his memories, he had long anticipated this day would come. He not only searched for numerous general dungeon guides on game forums, but also conducted several secret training sessions. Did everyone assume that as a priest, Baiye's combat ability must have been very weak in the past? Absolutely wrong. As a scholar-style, a type of cultivation-style priest, all of Baiye's skills have no cooldown. Furthermore, the skill animations, smoothness, and seamless combos are unmatched by players who level up through experience. Their combat power among players of the same level is definitely among the best. Therefore, he never restricted Su Li's spending of money. When the family really ran out of money, she could enter the dispatch mission instance to earn money, provided she had a certain ability to protect herself. Next, following the instructions in the forum guide, Baiye began searching the room for useful items and information. He first searched under the bed and in the cupboards and found a worn-out broom. The broom handle was made of solid wood and seemed to have been coated with tung oil, making it appear quite sturdy. Baiye pulled hard and detached the broom head. He weighed the wooden stick in his hand and nodded in satisfaction. It's better than fighting empty-handed. That's right, Baiye didn't bring anything with him in his backpack this time. There was no other way, they were too poor. Almost all the family's money had gone into buying professional equipment and items for Su Li, including his only piece of equipment, the broken wood staff. It was a gift from someone who healed other players back in the newbie village. A level 0 common quality staff, which is the standard equipment for beginners, is not as durable or hard as the broomstick I have in my hand that is coated with tung oil. Unless it's used for casting spells, Baiye doesn't intend to use it as a weapon. He continued searching and found a worn-out diary in the bedside table drawer. Although the diary was old, the cover was free of dust, indicating that someone had recently read it or written something in it. Baiye casually opened the diary and began to read its contents. First, Baiye turned to the first page and saw from the signature that the author of this diary should be the current owner of his body, named Alan Doyle. He then turned to the second page of his diary. Date, November 4, 1897. I don't know what I'm writing, and I don't know how to keep a record, but today, following John's disappearance on November 2nd, Hank has also disappeared. Good heavens, before them 3 servants had already disappeared from the manor. Butler Charles said they had gone back to their hometown, but why is the master's favorite dog, Toby, also missing? No, Toby disappeared back in October. The atmosphere in the manor grew increasingly eerie, and everyone was talking about it. Some say they stole their owner's things and ran away, but I know it's not that simple. Last night I heard strange noises coming from the basement, like someone crying or like a wild beast growling. Date, November 5, 1897. Just today, Lily somehow offended Butler Charles and was locked in the storage room. The butler said Lily had gone mad. I didn't believe it at first, but when I let her out, she grabbed my hand and started biting me like a mad dog. Date, November 6, 1897. The servants at the manor, affected by the series of events, said they couldn't stand the oppressive atmosphere and would rather go to the city to find new jobs. I wanted to leave too, but the butler Charles said that the master needed me to stay and help. My parents were indebted to Mr. Blake, but now I don't know what to do. I have a feeling that something terrible is about to happen. Date, November 7, 1897. The manor was shrouded in mist. I tried leaving, but no matter which direction I went, I always ended up back at the manor gate. The butler told us not to wander off, saying it was the master's order, but I'm really scared. I heard that sound again last night, this time it came from the attic. Date, November 20, 1897. Only the housekeeper and I were left. Everyone else is gone. Just yesterday, the cook, Martha, brought me an apple pie, and even the owner hasn't shown up in a long time. I secretly went down to the basement and found an iron door with strange symbols engraved on it. I dared not go in, but I knew that those missing people must be connected to this door. The last line is written in illegible handwriting. Just today, the housekeeper also went missing. Someone please help me. I don't want to be next. Tusk, who keeps a diary if they're a decent person. Baiye closed the diary and couldn't help but mutter a complaint. However, thanks to the unscrupulous person, he managed to extract a few useful pieces of information from the diary. 1. The frequent disappearances within the manor may be related to the basement and attic. 2. The manor is shrouded in an eerie mist, making it impossible to leave. 3. Besides myself, there shouldn't be anyone else in the manor. If there is, it might be the butler, whose villainous nature can be discerned from the diary entries. Should I check out the basement and attic first, or explore the servants' quarters? Baiye tucked the diary into his pocket, stroked his smooth chin, and finally shrugged, deciding to take it one step at a time and get out first. So he gripped the wooden stick and pushed open the door, the darkness of the corridor enveloping him like thick asphalt. Baiye took a deep breath, his nostrils filled with the pungent smell of rotting wood mixed with some kind of animal fur. My eardrums picked up the scurrying sound of my scurrying about 3 meters away in the cracks in the floor, and from further away, I could hear faint panting, like a large canine grinding its teeth in its sleep. He moved silently along the wall, the moonlight slanting in from the arched window at the end of the corridor, casting his shadow into a long, thin line. The third door from the left is the maid Lily's room. The doorknob is covered in verdigrease. His index finger had barely touched the metal surface when he jerked it back as if electrocuted. Some kind of viscous fluid remained in the keyhole, gleaming eerily dark red in the moonlight. All locked, he squinted, his knuckles probing the doors of the 4 adjacent rooms in turn. The wooden door echoed dully, mixed with the vibration of metal springs. All the locks were closed. This completely contradicts the diary entry about the servants escaping, and instead suggests that someone deliberately arranged this place into a secret room. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of Baiye's neck stood on end. His conditioned reflexes, honed over years in the cultivation world, caused him to instantly spin backward, a foul gust of wind whistling past his nose. In the darkness, 2 blood-red lanterns suddenly lit up, and the explosive sound of fangs tearing through the air was so loud it hurt our eardrums. Using the momentum of the swing, he swept the wooden stick in his hand horizontally. With a thud, the wooden stick slammed down hard on a body covered with stiff, needle-like hairs, the recoil making the tiger's mouth numb. The moonlight finally revealed the attacker's silhouette. Dark red sawdust fell in a rustling sound, and a black-haired hound as big as a calf pulled its claws out of a crack in the floor, emitting a low growl. 3 fist-sized fleshy growths protruded from its back, writhing eerily with each breath. Saliva dripped onto the oak floor, causing wisps of smoke to rise from it. Amidst the sizzling sound of corrosion, the pungent smell of sulfur and rust filled the air. What's most chilling are its eyes. Within the amber iris, fine silver runes floated, like an alchemical matrix etched in with a branding iron. Whenever moonlight shines through the stained glass window onto its face, the runes glow with a faint blue light. Woof! The second bark exploded with a metallic shrill sound. As the opponent lunged, Baiye leaped off the wall, his leather boot heels scraping against the wallpaper, carving deep furrows into the rose pattern. The stick in his hand, coated with tongue oil, gleamed faintly in the moonlight, and with a whooshing sound lashed out fiercely at the hunting dog's cheekbone. The moment the stick struck its target, Baiye's sword intent from his previous life suddenly erupted. The wooden stick in his hand transformed into an illusory longsword, its blade slicing through the air with a low hum. Ding! Congratulations on your first mastery of the special skill Sword Intent, gaining 54 potential points based on first use. Skill, Sword Intent. Rank First Order, Third Order can be freely controlled. Proficiency Advanced. Skill cost 1 to 100 spirit points per second. Skill cast time none. Skill cooldown none. Skill effect 1. Sharpness active makes the sword or similar weapon in hand even sharper, increasing physical attack by 100%, 300%. Also deals an additional instance of true damage equal to this. Skill effect 2. Entanglement active against non-sword weapons. It can entangle them with sword intent, temporarily imbuing them with the characteristics of the sharp sword intent, dealing additional true damage equal to 100%, 300% of the user's spirit strength. Skill effect 3. Enhancement active for any weapon that the user identifies as a sword. The user can nurture it with sword intent, gradually increasing its strength. It can also temporarily increase the sword's strength by 100% of its spirit power. Skill growth coefficient 10%, 32%. Note, if the weapon's durability is less than the player's own spirit value, 1 to 30 durability points will be consumed per second. The 38 points of true damage erupted instantly, severing the Black Hound's cheekbone and blood splattered everywhere. However, the monster's regenerative abilities far exceeded expectations. Its shattered bones began to heal at a visible speed. Interesting. Baiye's eyes narrowed slightly as he rapidly calculated the disparity in strength between himself and the enemy. The hounds were far stronger and more physically capable than I was, and their regenerative abilities were even more troublesome. If it's a head-on fight, even if you manage to kill the opponent, you'll expend a lot of physical and mental energy, and you might even need to use magic to heal your injuries. And the only weapon in his hand probably couldn't withstand the continuous enhancement of sword intent. Baiye did not choose to fight head-on. He withdrew the sword intent attached to the long staff and used the terrain to create a tug-of-war. He used the wall for leverage and landed lightly on the other side of the corridor, the hound's claws scraping the floor with a harsh squeak. As he retreated, he channeled his sword intent into the wooden stick once more, the blade slicing through the air and precisely striking the hound's neck. Ding! The sword blade struck the hound's scales, producing a crisp, metallic sound. The 38 points of true damage dealt a 2.5x critical hit, slashing a deep, bone-revealing wound across the hound's neck, from which dark green blood splattered. But the monster seemed to feel no pain. Although its wounds were healing, its movements were noticeably slower. Baiye gave it no chance to breathe, constantly changing position by using the corners of the corridor and the walls, unleashing sword intent time and time again, the blade precisely slashing towards vital points. Each attack takes away 26 to 38 points of the hound's health. No matter how strong its regenerative ability is, it cannot withstand this continuous damage. The hounds grew increasingly sluggish, their black fur stained crimson with blood, and a pungent, fishy stench filled the air. Baiye seized the opportunity, leaping onto the carved railing at the end of the corridor. Using the momentum of his descent, he concentrated his sword intent to the extreme and slashed at the hound's head. Clang. The blade struck the hound's skull, producing a crisp clang. The true damage cleaved through the skull, and the additional 500% critical strike chance triggered by hitting a vital point rendered the hound's regenerative abilities futile. Dark green blood gushed from the shattered skull, and its body collapsed heavily to the ground, twitching a few times before becoming still. Ding, you have killed the dungeon mob Wraith Hound LV-10 normal unit, gaining 55 experience points. Baiye let out a long sigh, the sword intent dissipated, and the staff in his hand returned to its original form. My hand was slightly numb, but I had finally dealt with this troublesome monster. This thing's strength and regeneration ability are indeed troublesome, but with the help of terrain and flexible tactics, it's not without a chance of victory. He muttered to himself, his gaze sweeping over the corpse on the ground as he plotted his next move. He continued exploring the servants' quarters, searching for clues. Soon, in one of the quarters, he found some writing in charcoal. "He's feeding our souls to the dogs." The handwriting was distorted and frantic, with a pentagram drawn next to it. In the center was a monster with a dog's head and a human body, and the tips of its claws were engraved with runes similar to those in the eyes of a hunting dog. At the very bottom, a sentence was repeatedly scribbled, almost piercing through the wooden board. "Moonlight grass is the antidote, moonlight grass is the antidote." Antidote? Baiye frowned, a big question mark appearing on his forehead. "Dude, is this thing designed for that black hunting dog from earlier? Why didn't you say so earlier? If I had known this thing existed, why would I have gone through all that trouble to kill it? He's already used up almost half of his stamina, and his mental energy has dropped significantly due to using sword intent. To make matters worse, the durability of the broomhead sword in his hand is less than 60 points. Baiye shook his head and continued to leisurely search each room, turning the pages by the moonlight. Not long after, he found 2 diaries in the rooms of 2 important figures mentioned in Alan Doyle's diary, the maid Lily and the gardener Hank. Like I said, who keeps a diary if they're a decent person? Baiye first opened the maid Lily's diary. The contents were quite lengthy, and even though he read quickly, it still took him quite a while to finish it. Date: October 10, 1897. I have never seen a book like that before. The cover was made of some kind of blackened leather, with badly worn edges, as if it had been caressed by countless hands. As I wiped the corner of the study desk with a rag, I happened to catch a glimpse of a pattern drawn on it in dark red ink. A black cat perched atop the skull, its eyes inlaid with 2 turquoise stones. In the flickering candlelight, those eyes seemed to come alive, staring at me. "Who gave you permission to look up?" The butler's cane suddenly slammed against the doorframe, startling me so much that I knocked over the brass candlestick. His pale face emerged from the shadows, the candlelight flickering on his gold-rimmed glasses, his eyes behind the lenses as cold as ice. "Remember your place, Lily. There are some things servants shouldn't be curious about." As I knelt on the floor picking up the fragments, I heard the sound of something heavy being dragged coming from the attic. Mr. Blake hasn't come downstairs for a whole week, and I've been placing his meals on a silver tray at the top of the attic stairs. Last night when I went to collect the dishes, I noticed the steak hadn't been touched at all, but the knife was covered in a dark, sticky substance like congealed blood. Date: October 25, 1897. Toby's paw is gone. I mean, that little rascal who always puts his wet paws on my apron was running around the kitchen yesterday with a piece of dried venison in his mouth. But Hank grabbed me today, his face ashen, and said he saw with his own eyes the owner carrying Toby into the basement. That's not Toby. Hank's nails dug almost into my arm. Its tail. God, its tail is wrapped around its owner's wrist like a snake. I was awakened in the middle of the night by noises in the basement. At first, I thought it was a mouse, but the sound became clearer and clearer. It was Toby's whimpering, mixed with human sobs, and it sounded like John's voice. I pressed myself against the cold stone wall and listened for a long time, until the butler suddenly appeared at the end of the corridor holding a kerosene lamp. He laughed and said there were rats in the basement, but I could clearly see dark red mud stuck to the tips of his leather boots. Date, November 2, 1897. John's pocket watch was still ticking. It hung on the antler coat rack in the foyer, its gilded watch chain swaying gently in the breeze. The butler said John stole the silver candlestick and ran away, but how could a man who even keeps his garden shears so neatly arranged have left behind his most treasured pocket watch? What was even more terrifying was what I discovered while on night duty. As the clock tower struck 3 in the morning, I was walking along the east wing corridor with a lantern when I suddenly heard the sound of fingernails scraping against wooden planks behind me. That was definitely not a rat. The sharp scratching sound repeated every 5 seconds, like someone tapping a code with their knuckles. The moment I turned around, the oil lamp illuminated a fresh crack in the wallpaper. A viscous liquid seeped from the crack, and upon closer inspection it smelled like Toby's usual shampoo. Date, November 4, 1897. The paper was covered with smudged ink and tear stains. Hank's hands were warm. I was trembling behind the flower cupboard as he was being escorted through the kitchen by 2 male servants. He struggled to stuff something into my apron pocket. It was a small silver blade of grass, warm from his palm, its roots still covered in greenhouse humus. If the butler's eyes turned amber, his last words were swallowed by the loud slamming of the basement iron door shut. Now I know it wasn't a warning at all but a dying wish. As I brought the mushroom soup into the dining room, the candlelight reflected off the butler's glasses, making his pupils glow with a honey gold hue, with fine black lines moving within his irises just like Toby's eyes on the night of his mutation. The moment the soup bowl shattered on the carpet, I heard the sound of chains rattling from the attic. I'm now locked in the storage room, and I can hear the sound of fingernails scratching outside the door. My God, those are not human fingernails, but some kind of barbed claws scratching at the door. I went to the cellar to get some wine in the middle of the night, and I heard Hank's voice coming from inside the wall. Lily ... run away. I started B***** G on the wall like a madman, but the housekeeper noticed. He said I was mentally unstable and wanted to lock me in the storage room. I escaped back to my room, and now the housekeeper is knocking on the door. After reading Lily's diary, Baiye seemed thoughtful and soon continued flipping through gardener Hank's notebook. Date, September 20, 1897. Moonflowers shouldn't bloom in this season. When I lifted the greenhouse tarpaulin, the entire seedbed shimmered with an eerie silver light. Those bell-shaped flowers that should have bloomed under the full moon were now twisted into distorted star shapes as if by an invisible hand, with fine, sharp teeth growing along the edges of their petals. Mr. Blake suddenly appeared behind me, his cashmere cloak sweeping across the dew-covered stone steps. Pick them all down. His voice seemed to come from a deep well. Remember, pull them up by the roots. Plants with broken roots will throw a tantrum. When my shears touched the first blade of grass, the stem suddenly spurted out a milky white sap. Blisters immediately formed where the substance touched the skin, yet the man wrapped the plants in a handkerchief and picked more than a dozen. His hands were raw and bleeding from the corrosive sap, yet he smiled like a child who had just received a new toy. Date, October 25, 1897. The writing, scribbled in pencil on a cigarette pack paper with mud stains on the edges, was tucked inside the diary. Toby is gnawing on his paw. Or rather, that lump buried under the oak roots was once Toby. I was just trying to make a hole for the newly planted violets, but my shovel unearthed a skeleton with a collar on it. If dogs could grow to the size of calves, if their skulls could split into 4 pieces, revealing the honeycomb-like cavities inside. The most terrifying thing was the obsidian embedded in its eye socket, engraved with the same symbols as the greenhouse iron gate. As I poked at the stone with a twig, it suddenly glowed red and Toby's voice came from underground. Hank, next. I still have half a canine tooth hidden in my trouser leg. It's sharper than my hunting knife. The moonflower rustled in its pot on the windowsill, as if urging me to give it to Lily. As Baiye closed the 2 diaries, moonlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the greenhouse, casting dappled shadows on the floor. He stroked the wilted moonflower in his pocket and finally understood why Hank had risked his life to deliver this hope. That's right, Baiye recognized it. In the 3rd room he was searching, the handwriting on the floor, repeatedly scribbled over, was exactly the same as Hank's. The reason why he went up to the 4th floor and wrote the words there is unknown, but that's no longer important. The important thing is that he probably already knows his mission objective. My initial idea was correct. Everything in this instance should ultimately lead to the attic and basement of this manor. But before that, he needs to gather 3 important clues: Lily's diary, Hank's diary, and his doodles. After that, he didn't need to rush to the attic and basement. because Baiye was almost certain that those were the locations where the dungeon boss battle would take place. It's best to leave all other areas for last before exploring everything else. Baiye pondered for a moment, then muttered to himself, well, maybe I should go check the flower garden now. If I can find the moonlight grass Hank mentioned, then I won't have to go through so much trouble if I encounter those hunting dogs again later. After leaving Hank's room, he continued exploring the other rooms to see if there was anything else he could use. Pushing open a half-closed wooden door, the room was filled with a musty, stale smell. Moonlight streamed through the dusty stained glass windows, casting dappled shadows on the floor. He looked around and found that the corner of the room was piled with old junk. Wooden boxes, rusty shovels, several rolls of moldy hemp rope, and some ceramic shards that looked like they had been carelessly discarded. However, amidst these odds and ends, an oil lamp stood quietly on a dilapidated wooden table, half filled with kerosene. Baiye approached the table and put it into his game inventory. This thing wasn't very useful to him, who had night vision, but it might come in handy sometimes. On the wall of the corridor on the first floor of the servants' quarters, a hand-drawn map of the manor's layout caught his eye. This drawing was done with charcoal pencil. The lines are rough but clearly legible. The map marks the various areas of the estate: the main building, servants' quarters, greenhouse, attic, basement, and functional areas such as the stables, wine cellar, farmland, orchard, and cemetery. After careful observation, Baiye discovered that the flower bed marked on the map was located exactly behind the main building, consistent with his previous speculation. Looks like it's time to go check out the flower nursery, Baiye muttered to himself. After memorizing the distribution map, he left the dormitory under the moonlight. Moonlight spilled onto the manor paths, and Baiye hurried along the directions marked on the map. The surroundings were eerily quiet, with only the sound of his footsteps echoing in the empty night. As we got closer to the flower bed, a faint silvery aura filled the air, as if some mysterious power was quietly awakening. When he finally stood at the entrance to the flower bed, the sight before him made him hold his breath. In the center of the flower bed, rows of silvery white bell-shaped plants shimmered softly in the moonlight, as if shrouded in a thin veil. These plants have long, slender leaves with sharp, pointed edges, and their stems are covered with fine veins that resemble some kind of ancient runes. In the corner of the flower bed, a huge creature lay on the ground, fast asleep. This hound was much larger than the black hound that Baiye had encountered before. Its body, excluding its tail, is over 3 meters long. Even when lying on the ground, its shoulder height is nearly 1 meter. It has bulging muscles and its fur is dark gray, like the rust color of smoke. The moonlight shone on it, casting an eerie silver glow that intertwined with the light of the moonflower, creating an exceptionally enchanting effect. Its head was enormous, and its eyes were closed as if it had fallen into some kind of slumber. Baiye approached cautiously, each step so light it was almost inaudible. He noticed that the beast's fur was covered with tiny cracks, as if it had been corroded by some kind of strong acid, and a silvery white viscous liquid seeped out from the cracks, reflecting the light of the moonflower. Even more unsettling, a runic eye appeared on its forehead, but it was closed as if it had fallen into some kind of slumber. Baiye held his breath and quietly approached the giant beast, getting within just a few steps of it. He could even feel the oppressive aura emanating from the behemoth, a suffocating pressure, as if an ancient beast was lurking in the shadows, ready to awaken at any moment. From the system's detection capabilities, Baiye obtained some information about the other party. Wraithhound Tier 1 Elite Unit. Reference level LV-12s. Status Body and Spirit fused dormant. Attributes: Strength 43, Agility 27, Constitution 33, Spirit 28, Physical Attack 36-48, Physical Resistance 18-38, Magic Resistance 16-32, Spirit Resistance 18-29, Movement Speed 16-28. Health Points: 742-742. Spirit Value 424-20. Stamina 45-45. Specialties: Soul Devouring, excellent. Soul Power Regeneration, excellent. Giant Body Transformation, excellent. Note, the perk is that the user's HP is 1.5 times that of a human of the same level, and Strength and Constitution are increased by 30%. Skills: Tier 1 Fear Solidification Beginner, Tier 1 Pounce Beginner. Oh, you can even view dungeon monster information, but why wasn't the previous one there? Are lowly monsters not worthy? Baiye silently complained to himself, then thought, but these level 12 dungeon creatures are only elite units. Then the dungeon boss must be even stronger. I'm only level 10, right? No wonder the forums say dispatch missions are dangerous, now I understand. However, the game clearly doesn't intend for players to directly confront this monster. so it includes a setting where the opponent falls into a deep sleep. He carefully observed the beast's condition and found that it showed no signs of waking up. His gaze finally settled on the patch of silvery-white, bell-shaped plants in front of the giant beast. These plants emitted soft, shimmering light under the moonlight, as if shrouded in a thin veil. At that moment he finally understood what Hank meant. He meant that this thing could calm the hunting dogs down. However, Baiye did not draw the stick and imbue it with sharp sword intent to cut it down, because this guy's health bar was simply too thick. He didn't believe that he could take advantage of the creature being asleep and quickly deplete its more than 700 health points with a piece of broom head. If I wake them up, I'll probably have no choice but to run. We'll need to find a sword or a knife or even just a fruit knife. So Baiye quietly retreated and began picking moonflower grass. To prevent any trickery involved, he even dug up the entire moonflower grass, including its roots. He didn't stop until he had picked 10 moonflowers, filling one of his backpack slots. The maximum number of different items that can be placed in each slot of the backpack varies, but most are capped at 10. Next, I should probably go take a look at the main building. When Baiye checked the manor's layout map, he already had a general idea of the distribution of the manor's main buildings. Besides the servants' quarters and flower gardens, there is a tall main building and an attic opposite the servants' quarters. Behind these three main buildings are the estate's functional areas, which are estimated to include stables, barns, a mill, a wine cellar, and workshops. There's no point in wasting time exploring such a place, because even if there is any information inside, it probably won't be very important. Similarly, places like farmland, orchards, and cemeteries don't need to be explored. Apart from the clues that can be found in cemeteries, the others are not important. As for cemeteries, Baiye is simply too lazy to dig them up. In other words, Baiye's next destination should be to search for clues around the main building. As Baiye pushed open the 3-meter-high main hall door and stepped inside, the copper chains of the crystal chandelier suddenly groaned under the weight. As he rolled to the side, thousands of crystal shards rained down, spreading out a shimmering galaxy on the Persian carpet. Tusk, this is definitely not an accident, is it? The fact that the character I'm playing, Alan Doyle, is still alive at this point in time proves it's not due to years of neglect. So is this a trap targeting Alan Doyle? Ignoring the tiny cut on his arm from a crystal shard, Baiye began searching the hall. Sofa, coffee table, cabinet. Unfortunately, clues are obviously not placed in such an obvious place. Baiye crouched down and carefully examined the carpet to see if anything was hidden underneath. He lifted the carpet little by little and found some strange symbols carved into the floor in one corner, like ancient runes. Just then, he heard a soft ticking sound. Baiye became alert and followed the sound, discovering a hidden compartment behind an oil painting on the wall from which the ticking sound was coming from. Opening the hidden compartment revealed a small mechanical device counting down. Beside it was a note that read, "Alan Doyle, your fate ends here." Heth, did you already anticipate that Alan Doyle would eventually succumb to the mental strain and come to the main hall to search? So you arranged all of this to eliminate the last survivor. Baiye frowned. Although he didn't know what this thing did, his cautious nature made him decide to stop the device from activating. He quickly inspected the device and discovered that the countdown could be stopped by changing the wiring. In the final seconds, Baiye successfully dismantled the device and retrieved an item from it that displayed system information. An alchemical bomb, he gasped, thinking that the secrets hidden in this manor must be extraordinary, that someone would go to such lengths to kill Alan Doyle. Who is it, the mysterious butler who appears in the diary, or Mr. Black, the owner of the manor? Baiye decided to start the investigation with the butler. He headed towards the room on the first floor. Judging from all the signs, the butler held a high position in the manor. Since he couldn't find his room in the servants' quarters, perhaps he lived in the main building. Baiye proceeded with extreme caution, fearing to trigger more dangerous traps, but fortunately the journey was uneventful. In a dimly lit corridor, Baiye found a room with a plaque above it that read Charles, indicating that he had found the butler's residence. The door was opened using the same violent means, and a faint smell of herbs wafted out of the room. Baiye searched the entire house but found only a tattered ledger. It recorded daily expenses, but several huge expenditures were marked in a very obscure way. However, at the back of the ledger were some of Charles's memos. Charles's memorandum. Date October 1, 1897. Master orders the addition of the following to the purchase list. Obsidian X10 requires stained with human blood. 5 silver scalpels. Live domestic dog healthy, preferably a puppy. He's started practicing that evil book. I must destroy the evidence, otherwise once the manor's secrets are exposed, I'll be hanged too. Date October 30, 1897. Terrifying screams echoed from the basement, lasting for a full 3 hours. While delivering food, I glimpsed a monster with human hands chained to a corner. The owner said it was a necessary sacrifice. If he can still be called a master. Date November 2, 1897. John has disappeared. He stole valuable silverware from the manor. Mr. Black was furious, but considering John had been a servant of the manor for many years, he forgave him. Date November 4, 1897. Good heavens, how could that drunkard Hank dare to steal wine from the cellar? He fell to his death in a well, but for Mr. Blake's sake, I must keep it a secret. After reading this, Baiye sneered. What a blatant attempt to cover up the truth. Based on the information he had, Charles was at least playing a supporting role in this story. And who knows, he might even be the mastermind behind the whole thing. Is writing this now an attempt to clear my name someday when things are exposed? Baiye carefully searched the butler's room again and unexpectedly discovered something. It was located on the side of the headboard. Baiye's fingers brushed against the oak wainscoting above the bedside table, and the subtle difference in texture made him suddenly stop. On the carved, decorative line 80 centimeters above the ground, the wood grain of a maple leaf emblem is slightly different from the other areas. This is the patina formed by long-term pressing with fingers. Click. The moment the hidden compartment popped open, a musty smell mixed with the spicy aroma of wormwood wafted out. Baiye used a stick to pry open the spider web and found a leather journal and a letter sealed with sealing wax lying on a velvet cushion. The sealing wax pattern is an eye with a vertical pupil, and the edges are wrapped with thorn patterns. A diary and a secret letter. Was it because they were in such a hurry when they fled the manor that they didn't have time to take anything with them? Or, September 1, 1897. Edmund sat in the library for 7 hours. As I carefully tucked the aged reincarnation of souls into the alchemy tome section, this poor wretch was overwhelmed with worry about his wife's tuberculosis. Sure enough, when he summoned me tonight to ask, is immortality possible? His fingers kept tracing the gold-embossed title of that book. Sherry spilled into a pool of blood in his trembling hands. How ironic, he'll never know that I tore out the crucial 3 pages about the antidote for the eternal night grass. November 2, 1897. Very good. John is a strong man, and merging his soul with Toby's body was indeed the right choice. If all goes well, we will have a perfect experimental subject. November 4, 1897. Toby's test subject began to autophagy. The moonflower seedlings are growing well in the 5th greenhouse, but Hank always likes to meddle. This morning he actually questioned why the fertilizer formula was changed. This idiot doesn't understand at all. Soil mixed with bone meal is the only way for plants to absorb enough resentment. It's time to deal with the gardener. Drunk driving and falling into the well is a good excuse, and the humus under his fingernails can be explained as something he picked up while struggling. After reading the diary, Baiye finally confirmed that the butler Charles was indeed the mastermind. However, this letter. When Baiye opened it, some kind of black powder fluttered down from between the layers of the letter. The delicate cursive script spread across the parchment to coaling gray. Pollution levels at Blackhammer Estate have reached critical levels, and the 7th batch of shepherds will be transported via Blackthorn Wharf on the night of the lunar eclipse. Note 1. Ensure Edmund signs the inheritance transfer agreement before he fully transforms into a beast. 2. The newly arrived relic powder is mixed into his daily black tea. 3. Beware of papal hounds. Their activity in the dock area has increased by 27%. 7th Elder of the Eternal Night Society. A simple map was drawn in the lower right corner of the letter, and next to the outline of the dock was a disturbing note. Soul-eating beast mother containment area level 3 alert. A soul-eating beast. Are you referring to that black-haired hunting dog from earlier? Judging from its appearance based on the diary description and the split personality it developed from being tormented by the moonflower, it might actually be true. Moreover, judging from the contents of the secret letter, there seems to be a force called the Eternal Night Society behind this matter. The Eternal Night Society. The Eternal Night's lost path. What is the connection between this faction and the name of the world? The secret letter also mentions Blackthorn Wharf, so there's more to this instance, and Blackthorn Wharf is the location for the next instance. The clues on the 1st floor have been exhausted. The next stop is the 2nd floor where the owner lives. The spiral staircase leading to the 2nd floor was covered with a dark red carpet, and each step was embroidered with a twisted aurora rose pattern. As Baiye stepped onto the final step, the entire carpet suddenly curled up like a living tongue, revealing a dense array of canine scratches beneath. The marks stretched from the study doorway all the way to the master bedroom at the end of the corridor, with half a human fingernail embedded in the deepest wood shavings. On the bronze doorknob of the study, the obsidian pupils of the aurora rose rippled. The moment Baiye pushed open the door, the brass planetarium in the corner suddenly spun wildly, and the ancient books on the bookshelf opened automatically as if controlled by an invisible hand. Hundreds of pages floated in a vortex in the draft, eventually settling on the chapter that recorded the forbidden ritual. Inside the display case made of meteorite iron, the book, The Art of Soul Reincarnation, is breathing. The leather covering the book cover was covered with pore-like protrusions, and a pale yellow fluid seeped out as the white knight approached. This is not ordinary leather at all. It is made from the skin of living alchemical creatures. The moment he approached, the stench of blood mixed with the smell of decaying grass assaulted his senses. He looked at the cover and saw that it was written in an ancient script as the record of soul reincarnation. Just as Baiye used a silver hairpin he had obtained from the maid Lily's room to turn the pages of the book, he suddenly felt a mental attack. At the same time, the system notification sounded suddenly. Ding. You have browsed the forbidden book, the record of soul reincarnation. Your mental resistance is being assessed. Judgment failed. Your mental resistance is far higher than the judgment value. Your sanity has not been reduced. Pshaw, I thought it was something special. It looks impressive, but it's really nothing special. Did they really think their mental resistance at the mid-stage of the Golden Core realm in their previous life was a joke? Baiye ignored the attempts to erode her reason and began reading. When infusing the soul of the cursed into the body of the black cat, it must be accompanied by moonshine grass distillate, recipe in Appendix III. If golden spots appear on the iris, immediately inject a katydid's dose of eternal night pollen. Experiments can use the carcasses of large dogs and the souls of healthy men to create vengeful hounds, while gentle women require more ferocious creatures. Baiye only read the first few pages. He didn't have time to read the rest. So he wrapped the book, The Record of Soul Reincarnation, in a tablecloth to see if he would have time to read it after completing his mission. If he doesn't have time, he'll have to see if the system allows him to take the book back. However, just as he picked up the book, a torn page of manuscript suddenly fluttered down from between the pages. Is this the manor owner's experimental log? Among the tattered pages of the manuscript are hastily written notes by Edmund Black, the owner of the manor, interspersed with numerous corrections, bloodstains, and scorch marks. Experimental Record 1. Date October 10, 1897. Title First Attempt at Fusion. Materials Domestic dog male died of illness. Fragments of the servant Yuna's soul voluntarily provided. No, she was screamed as she was ripped off. Process After the soul fragments were injected into the transmutation circle, the dog corpse convulsed violently but failed to revive. Conclusion Living material is necessary. A domestic dog that has been dead for more than 1 hour cannot carry a soul. Note, Yuna's soul cursed me before it dissipated. Ridiculous, what can a dead person do? Experiment Record 15. Date October 16, 1897. Title A Breakthrough in Obsidian Stability. Materials Live hunting dog stolen from the village servant Hughes. Procedure When Hughes's soul was infused into the hound, the obsidian suddenly shattered. The hound's head swelled up and exploded, leaving brain matter splattered on the laboratory walls. Conclusion Obsidian must be pre-ground into powder. Using raw obsidian directly will lead to energy overload. Note: Hughes's dying gaze seemed to mock me. Next time I'll choose an even cowardly soul. Experiment Record 27. Date November 2, 1897. Title The First Successful Product. Materials Toby the dog, my pet, and John the servant. 1. Sever Toby's throat and activate the transmutation circle before he dies. 2. Forcibly extract John's soul. His struggles made the soul fragments impure. 3. The fused creature stood upright for 10 seconds before lunging at me. I had to pierce its heart with a silver dagger to stop it from moving. Conclusion: a soul driven by resentment, not fear, is necessary. The stronger the negative emotions, the more controllable the resulting aggression. Note: Toby, I once fed him steak and he tried to tear my throat open. It seems emotions are superfluous after all. Experiment Record 42. Date November 6, 1897. Title A Truly Perfect Creation. Materials Wild wolf with a stronger physique. Maid Lily, who discovers the laboratory's secret and is extremely terrified. Process 1. Let Lily witness me feeding Hank's soul to the hounds. Her screams were absolutely beautiful. 2. After the fusion was complete, the product knelt quietly at my feet until I gave the order to attack, at which point it bit off my left little finger. Conclusion: the product cannot distinguish between friend and foe. Obsidian implantation in the forehead is required for forced control. Note: losing a finger isn't a loss, at least it proves the feasibility of control. Next time wear iron gloves. Experiment Record 55. Date November 7, 1897. Title Mass-produced hunting dogs and side effects. Materials: 6 domestic dogs, 6 servants pretended to dismiss them, but actually to extract their souls. Breakthrough: 1 discovered that the matrix arranged with moongrass and obsidian has the ability to summon vengeful hounds. And I can control the hounds to a certain extent, at the cost of the hounds' aggressive desire decreasing when they come into contact with moongrass components again. 2. A pack of mass-produced hounds can form an encirclement, but once one dies the others will briefly fall silent. New problem: my skin is starting to fester. Is this a backlash from the transmutation circle? Or a sign of soul contamination? Note, I saw fangs growing in the mirror. It's a hallucination probably caused by fatigue. Experiment record 69. Date November 8, 1897. Title: The Final Frenzy. Materials: myself, my left arm was rotten and cut off as an experimental subject, the last servant in the dungeon, and a live black cat process. 1. By merging my soul and my servant's soul into the black cat's body in an attempt to create a higher existence, the soul-leading beast. That's how it's described in the record of soul reincarnation. Its power is far beyond what the Wraith Hound can compare to. 2. The product was a writhing mass of flesh with a human face and sharp teeth, constantly shouting Edmund, liar. 3. Enduring the excruciating pain, I removed the excess meat, but I was still missing something. Date: November 9, 1897. Today is the full moon. My experiment is missing one last piece of material. The soul of Ellen Doyle, the purest soul I have ever seen. He will achieve my immortality today. So that's how the vengeful hound came to be. However, according to the contents of the record of soul reincarnation and the log, their goal was not just to create a vengeful hound, but an even more perfect soul-leading beast, a soul-leading cat. The vengeful hound I encountered in the flowerbed was already level 12. Could the final boss of this dungeon really be a fully formed soul-leading cat? Are they at least level 13 or even higher boss units? What's the point of playing then? However, as mentioned before, the system will not present a certain death situation without a reason. So even if the final opponent is a soul-leading cat, which is stronger than the Wraith Hound, there are ways to deal with it. For example, there's a moonlight grass solution mentioned in the record of soul reincarnation that can temporarily suppress the soul-leading cat. The scent of moongrass alone, before it was made into a potion, was enough to put that vengeful hound into a deep sleep. If it were made into a solution, it would probably be a powerful weapon against the soul-leading cat. Just then, Baiye searched around and found a medicine bottle containing a silvery liquid on the lab table in the study room, along with a recipe for moonlight grass solution and experimental steps written next to the bottle. Tool: Moonlight Plant Solution. Rank: First rank. Quality: Excellent. Property: Pharmaceutical. Description: a product purified from moonflower and other ingredients, possessing the effect of restoring sanity. Effect: instantly restores 100 sanity points, then restores 5 sanity points every 3 seconds for 1 minute. Oh, so this thing doesn't put the vengeful hounds to sleep, but rather restores their sanity. Why did that vengeful hound in the flowerbed fall into a deep sleep? Baiye didn't think too much about it, but instead began to organize the information he had obtained in the dungeon. So far, the clues I've gathered include Alan Doyle's diary, Lily's diary, Hank the gardener's diary, Hank the gardener's doodles, the butler's shopping list, the butler's diary, a secret letter from the Society of Eternal Night, Edmund Black's experimental log, and a book called Soul Reincarnation. According to the analysis of the game's rating mechanism on the forum, reaching this point is basically equivalent to completing most of one of the main quests. All that's needed is to find a way to escape, and your rating will definitely not be lower than B. However, there are still some details I can scrutinize, such as the important character mentioned in the diary, the cook, Martha. He had thoroughly searched her room in the servants' quarters but found no useful clues. Logically speaking, all the important NPCs involved in this event, except for John, who died young, and especially Martha, who survived to the end, should have left some information behind. But where could the information she left be if not in her dorm room? Could it be? Baiye looked down at the first floor from the second-floor corridor railing. When he was searching the first floor earlier, he seemed to have overlooked the kitchen located at the back of the main building. Could it be that the cook, Martha, placed that so-called clue in the kitchen? Soon, Baiye went downstairs, moving along the shadows of the corridor leading from the main hall to the back kitchen. As he approached, his nostrils suddenly caught a familiar stench of decay. That was the smell of moonflower sap mixed with rotting flesh and blood. The snoring coming from the kitchen made his pupils shrink. It was yet another vengeful hound. The kitchen iron door was ajar, and a half-length apron hung on the rusty hinges. Just as Baiye took 3 steps closer, 5 dagger-like claws suddenly emerged from the crack in the door, gleaming coldly in the moonlight. Tisk, they've really gone into mass production. He took a half-step back, watching the hunting dog, whose size was almost the same as the first one, smash through the door and pounce out. The monster's right forepaw is clearly deformed, with the toe joint twisted in the opposite direction, indicating it is obviously an imperfect replica. Ow. The moment the hound pounced, Baiye used the wall as leverage to somersault in midair, his wooden stick precisely piercing the smoked meat hook on the ceiling. Using the momentum to swing over the hound's head, he then smashed the salt shaker into the monster's eyes. Coarse salt grains crackled with electricity as they exploded on the rune's eyeball, and the hound let out a pitiful howl like a baby crying. Upon landing, Baiye grabbed the iron pot to parry, his sharp claws slicing through the bottom of the pot with a piercing screech. He seized the opportunity to roll towards the stove, grabbed a piece of pine firewood, lit it with fire magic, and thrust the blazing firewood directly into the monster's gaping maw. The smell of burning wood, accompanied by inhuman screams, exploded in the kitchen. But the hunting dog, its throat burned through, grabbed the firewood with its 5 human fingers and hurled it at Baiye's face. Amidst the raging flames, the runes in the hound's iris suddenly became disordered. Seizing this half-second opening, the wooden staff expert once again concentrated his sword intent and pierced the monster's left eye like a spear. Lost him. The hunting dog, its eye socket pierced, let out a mournful howl like a baby crying. Taking advantage of the moment, Baiye stuffed a moonflower into its gaping jawbone. The instant silver light burst forth from the gap in the dog's snout. Countless translucent arms struggled forth from the monster's body. Those were. The devoured soul is now turning on its host. Taking advantage of the brief moment when the hound was controlled, Baiye rushed into the kitchen without hesitation and pulled out the B***G knife that he had noticed during the fight with the hound. The blade plunged into the hound's throat along the wound created by the wooden stick, and dark red blood splattered onto the tiles, corroding them into honeycomb-like holes. He gripped the hilt of the knife tightly and spun it, unleashing a sharp, intense sword intent. The hound's struggling movements gradually ceased, and the runes in its pupils completely disappeared. Ding. You have killed a dungeon creature, a level 10 Wraith Hound normal unit, and gained 55 experience points. Just then, a small ring fell from the wound in the hound's throat. Tusk, this is a bit troublesome. Baiye glanced at the staff in his hand, which had less than 20 durability points left due to being entangled in sword intent. He felt that the thing was no longer usable. So he simply threw it away and then noticed the ring that had just fallen off. Is this a kill drop? Why didn't the previous one have this? He joked, picked up the ring with the blade of his B***G knife, and placed it on the sink to rinse. Then without hesitation he picked it up. But the moment Baiye picked up the ring, his consciousness was pulled into a fragmented memory, Hank's perspective. I hid in a corner of the greenhouse and watched Charles bury a body in a bed of moonflower seedlings. The corpse's fingers were still twitching. It was clearly John. As I turned to run away, a sharp pain suddenly shot through the back of my neck. Charles's voice rang in my ears. Mr. Gardner, your humus soil formula has been a great help. Before my consciousness faded, I saw my blood dripping onto the roots of the moonflower. Suddenly, those silver leaves grew wildly, wrapping around my limbs like tentacles. The last thing I remember is Charles putting a brass ring in my mouth. The Eternal Night Society needs new test subjects, and you are honored to be the vessel for the 7th batch of shepherds. When Baiye came to his senses, he was stunned for a moment. This was fragments of Hank's memory. Tusk, how come this dungeon has this kind of mechanism? If you accidentally encounter this thing during combat and get forcibly controlled for even a short while, your corpse will probably be cold by then. Baiye sighed, put the ring in his pocket, and then searched the kitchen for any clues Martha might have left behind. A moment later, he took out a piece of paper that had been pressed down by a spice jar from the cupboard. This is Martha's diary, date November 19, 1897. The handwriting is messy, and the paper is stained with blood and tears. I can't take it anymore. Last night, while I was on night duty, I saw Butler Charles carrying an oil lamp as he walked into the fog. The thick fog parted like a living thing, creating a passage and revealing the dark cemetery behind it. Not long after he disappeared among the tombstones, the sound of barking dogs came from the mist. It was Toby's voice, but it was hoarse and terrifying than when he was alive. This afternoon, while I was preparing dinner in the kitchen, I heard Lily screaming from the basement. When I rushed downstairs with the cleaver, I only saw Charles standing in front of the iron gate, holding a blood-stained silver knife in his hand. Martha, he turned around, his amber eyes behind his glasses, you know far too much you shouldn't know. I fled back to the kitchen and hid the knife in a secret compartment. Now I must escape from the cemetery under the cover of night. The handwriting suddenly became messy. Footsteps, that's the sound of hunting dogs, I must. The handwriting has returned to normal, but the cursive writing still shows that the other person intentionally wrote quickly. In my panic, I called out Hank's name. He briefly regained his senses and gave me a little more time. Alan, if you are lucky enough to see this letter, please, you must live on. Remember the following 3 points. 1. Those monsters were created using our fallen comrades. Hank, John, Lily. Their souls were forcibly stuffed into canine bodies, but if you call their names, the hounds will briefly regain their senses. 2. Regarding the fog, the manor is shrouded in a barrier created by the butler, with only one path leading to the cemetery. Every night, Charles would carry a specially made oil lamp through the fog. The lamp oil was extracted from the roots of moonflower. I stole some from the hidden compartments in the kitchen floor, enough to light up for 10 minutes. 3. Regarding the escape, follow the path on the west side of the cemetery to the 7th tombstone, where Mrs. Blake is buried. The back of her tombstone is engraved with mysterious runes, and a secret passage will appear when it is smeared with moonflower juice. But be careful, Charles patrols the cemetery every night, and if he spots you. May God bless you, Martha Browns. After reading the letter, Baiye's expression became quite interesting. He had only wanted to try and see if there were any clues in the kitchen, but he never expected there would actually be a surprise. The cook, Martha, is arguably the best support among the NPCs in this dungeon, not only providing a safe way to clear it. They also unexpectedly learned that calling out the name of the hound fusionist could temporarily restore its sanity. However, the former won't be of much help. Although this route will most likely allow me to complete the game, the final score will definitely not be very high. Getting a grade would be good enough. While an A-level rating is already quite high for a mission in the game Origins, he wanted to be a little more ambitious, and he also planned to do something about what was happening in this instance. First of all, regardless of whether the butler shows up or not, and whatever he intends to do, he has no chance of succeeding in this so-called soul-devouring beast experiment. If he were to appear in front of me. Baiye glanced at the newly acquired weapon in his hand, a B*****G knife, and the many other knives he had stored in his inventory. Haha, he's probably going to suffer a lot. It's worth noting that back in the cultivation world, in order to conceal his identity as a sword cultivator, he also practiced a decent sword technique, the skill of which was not much inferior to that of swordsmanship. Even without any cultivation, he could still use his sword intent to unleash the power of the B*****G knife in his hand, far exceeding its original strength. By now, the clues for Baiye have been mostly pieced together. The only remaining locations to explore are basement and attic. The basement, barring any unforeseen circumstances, should contain some important information, but it won't be the boss's room. The attic will. Therefore, the place he is going to now is the basement located on the far right of the main building, opposite the leftmost kitchen. When Baiye arrived at the basement and opened the rusty iron window, he was greeted not by the expected stench, but by a faint scent of herbs. Moonlight streamed in through the skylight above, illuminating the large figure huddled in the corner. It was a vengeful hound that was over 3 meters long, more than twice the size of the 2 smaller monsters from before, and even larger than the one in the flower bed. At this moment, for some unknown reason, it has become this state of muscle atrophy and dull fur. In particular, most of the bone spurs on its spine were broken. Lily, Baiye recognized the monster in the basement. It was the one mentioned in Edmund's experimental manuscript, a monster whose body was fused with Lily's soul using a wolf's body. According to him, this is a perfect creation, with a level of 13. Perhaps it was because of attacking Edmund that he ended up in this miserable state, and even his extremely abnormal regenerative ability couldn't heal his injuries. Upon hearing the call, the hound's body trembled violently and its cloudy pupils gradually focused. When it raised its head, Baiye saw a familiar light shining in those eyes. It was Lily's gaze, gentle yet stubborn. Alan, a hoarse female voice rasped from the hound's throat, "Kill me, please." Baiye crouched down, the moonlight grass solution shimmering silver in his palm. "I will, but before that, tell me everything you know." "Charles, he's not an ordinary butler," Lily's voice trailed off. "He is a knight servant of the Eternal Night Society, specifically responsible for finding suitable experimental sites in various locations. Black Manor is just one of their bases." Baiye noticed that the hound's spine was slowly disintegrating, and black smoke was seeping from the wound. He quickened his pace, asking, "Martha said the escape route through the mist is in the cemetery, and can be opened by the runes on Mrs. Shirley's tombstone. Is that true?" Although he already knew from the system notification that this was indeed a safe exit, he wanted to confirm it further, or rather, to elicit more details. It's true, Lily nodded with difficulty, but if you choose to run away, they will hunt you down forever. The real soul-eating cat is hidden in the attic, a product of Edmund's soul fused with the black cat. Baiye nodded, reassuring her, don't worry, I won't run away. But Martha's message to me said that names can restore the sanity of you experimental subjects. Will that be effective against the soul-eating cat? Hearing this, her voice suddenly became urgent. Don't call Edmund's name. He's completely turned into a beast, but you can try calling his wife's name, Shirley Black, she's his only obsession. Finally, with her last ounce of strength, Lily raised her front paw and pointed to a hidden door in the corner of the basement. That leads to Mr. Black's bedroom. His wife possesses a soul-slaying blade from the east. Using it against the soul-eating cat, it can inflict irreparable damage. This might help you. At this point, Lily's consciousness began to waver, and her gaze gradually turned fierce. Quick, kill them. Baiye stood up, nodded, and then plunged the B***G knife directly into the other person's throat. The moment the black blood spurted out, Lily smiled with relief. Thank you, Alan. Baiye stood there until the last glimmer of light in Lily's eyes disappeared into the darkness. Ding, you have killed the dungeon creature, Wraith Hound LV-13, Elite Unit, gaining 672 experience points. Base 140 times 160% experience for killing a creature 3 levels higher times 3x experience for elite units. Pushing open the hidden door, Baiye entered a narrow passageway with stairs leading upwards. When he reached the end and opened the door, he found himself standing in a luxurious bedroom. A portrait of the Blacks hangs on the wall. In the painting, Shirley Black has striking blonde hair and a gentle, sweet smile. On the bedside table, he found the precious sword, carefully placed in an exquisite sandalwood box. This soul-slaying blade is about 3 feet and 7 inches long, with 7 gems inlaid on its scabbard. It emits a clear hum when the blade is drawn. Ancient Eastern runes were engraved on the blade, gleaming with a faint purple light under the moonlight. Ding, you have obtained a key piece of equipment for the dungeon, the soul-slaying blade. Equipment. Soul Reaper Blade, Bloodstained Rose. Rank First Rank. Quality Excellent. Type One-Handed Weapon Knife. Recommended equipment for Warrior Assassin. Usage requirements, Mental Resistance 18. Description. A cursed sword, its blade flowing with ominous black mist. The souls and blood of all beings slain by it merge into the blade, making it even more powerful. Equipment attributes. Physical attack 40-80 points, strength +6 12 points, agility +4 8 points, constitution +6 12 points, spirit -2 4 points, mana 200 400. Converted from soul energy, durability 2800, weight 1.5 approx. 3.75 kg. Equipment effect 1, soul/passive. If the target possesses the soul trait, deal an additional 50% soul damage and apply the soul punishment effect, reducing soul damage recovery efficiency by 80%. Ineffective against targets of tier 3 and above. Equipment effect 2, blood soul devour, passive. After each enemy is killed, devour their blood essence and soul energy to permanently increase the equipment's attributes. Negative effect. Curse of the Evil Soul, passive. Those who come into contact with this blade suffer 18 points of sanity damage per minute. Those with 36 sanity resistance, 18, are immune to some of the sanity reduction damage. Those with sanity resistance, 36, are completely immune. When the system displayed the equipment description of the knife, Baiye's eyes lit up. Is it actually a tier 1 item of excellent quality? He originally thought that in a dungeon that seemed to be of low extraordinary level, he would be lucky to get any high-quality equipment. He never expected that it would be a tier 1 excellent equipment, and an extremely rare soul-matching treasure at that. It not only deals an additional 50 soul damage to units with the soul trait, but also has an 80% chance to inflict a penalty. Most importantly, it can actually evolve. Just this ability to evolve, by consuming the essence and soul of enemies it kills, makes this sword potentially as valuable as a perfect grade piece of equipment. If Baiye could take it back and put it up for auction online, he might be able to sell it for an astronomical price. His little sister's career path wouldn't be short of money anymore. However, having finally found a good knife, he naturally couldn't possibly sell it. He's already doing his best to support her through university. He wouldn't give up everything for her just to repay his adoptive parents' kindness. After all, he's not a simp. He glanced at the B***G knife in his hand, chuckled and joked, "Sorry buddy, humans always want something better." Even though he said that, Baiye didn't throw the knife away. Instead, he tossed it into his inventory to gather dust, just in case he needed it someday. Now, only the final boss room remains. Before heading to the attic, Baiye first toured the entire manor to see if there were any other dungeon monsters. After all, what if the upcoming boss, Soul Eating Cat, has the ability to forcibly summon other minions? Wouldn't I be caught in a pincer attack? This is something Baiye must be wary of. First, Baiye naturally returned to the flower garden once again to kill the elite vengeful hound that John and Toby had merged into. Although the other party sensed the threat and woke up the moment Baiye approached. But in that short time, Baiye had already arrived beside it with his special footwork. The soul-slaying blade deals considerable damage, especially against wraith hounds, which are creatures with soul attributes and deal an additional 50% soul damage. With the addition of Blade of the Edge and a 500% critical hit that decapitates with a single strike, the vengeful hound, Toby, died the moment it awoke, even before the method of controlling it by calling John's name could be used. Killing the level 12 elite unit gave him 336 experience points, which is better than nothing. After killing Toby, Baiye only rested for a moment before continuing to wander around the manor, where he found a level 10 monster in the orchard, farmland, and wine cellar respectively. Finally, at the cemetery, they were attacked by 3 level 10 vengeful hounds. Ha, I knew this only escape route wouldn't be so easy. With the soul-slaying blade in his hand, he naturally didn't need to think too much and killed them one by one. After confirming that there were no other monsters or clues in the entire manor except for the attic, Baiye finally stepped towards the attic. As he entered the attic and stepped onto the first step, the entire building suddenly shook. The sound of breaking chains came from above the attic. Something enormous was awakening. Hiss tilde this oppressive feeling. Is this really something a level 10 priest can handle? Baiye made a comment but didn't stop walking and went straight to the top of the pavilion. Here, there is an open space with an altar in the center. The altar is surrounded by a large number of moonflowers, which emit shimmering light under the full moon. According to the description in the record of soul transfer, the soil used to grow them should be a large amount of obsidian powder mixed with a small amount of soul-corroding powder. Obsidian powder can stabilize the fusion process between the black cat and the soul, while moonflower can prevent the soul from rejecting the body. Furthermore, prolonged exposure to moonlight grass will cause a fully formed soul-eater cat to develop drug resistance, making it difficult for it to regain its sanity. Unless a concentrated solution of moonflower essence is poured directly into its stomach, the effect of moonflower on it will be reduced to a minimum. Moonflowers emitted a silvery mist under the full moon, and White Knight's boots crushed a plant that sprouted from a crack in the floor. Obsidian powder rose with each step, refracting into stardust-like spots of light in the moonlight. The moment the soul-eating cat propped itself up from the altar, the entire attic groaned under its strain. With a body twice the size of a Siberian tiger, a tail like a steel whip cracked the floor, leaving fissures. Dozens of human faces scurried across its black fur. This soul-devouring cat had already devoured the souls of dozens of people. Edmund Black, the Soul-Eater Cat, Tier 1 Boss Unit. Reference level LV15. Status Spirit Body Fusion 98%. Attributes: Strength 54, Agility 56, Constitution 53, Spirit 48, Physical Attack 36 tilde 51, Physical Resistance 18 tilde 48, Magic Resistance 16 tilde 46, Spirit Resistance 22 tilde 46, Movement Speed 32 tilde 58. Health Points 1530. Spirit Value 677.20. Stamina 8892. Sanity 182,480. Enters a state of madness when sanity falls below 50%. Specialties: Soul-devouring transcendent soul power regeneration, excellent giant body, excellent primary alchemical body, excellent. Note, the Soul-Eater Cat has a larger body, and its special ability is giant formation. Its HP is equivalent to twice that of a human of the same level, and its strength and constitution are increased by 40%. Skills: Second-tier Soul Tremor Beginner, First-tier Flash Strike Intermediate. Note, this is not a goal that a normal level 10 player can solve. Perhaps you can think of other methods. Tusk, a level 15 boss unit, this stat line is way too over the top. Baiye frowned slightly, unable to help but click his tongue in amazement. Just by looking at the other party's attribute panel, Baiye knew that the system was not originally designed for players to fight it. After all, a single slap from this guy could probably take away a significant amount of health from an average level 10 player, and might even render them unable to fight. Baiye lightly twirled his sword with his right hand, his eyes fixed on the enemy before him with amusement. Originally, all he needed to do was immediately call out Mrs. Shirley's name to wake Edmund, which would have allowed him to cleverly avoid this final round of combat and ensure that his mission rating wouldn't drop. However, as a genius skilled in both swords and sabers, Baiye prefers to rely on his own true strength to defeat his enemies. And in a victorious manner, he awakened Edmund and had a face-to-face conversation. At that moment, a faint, dark red light suddenly appeared on the blood groove at the edge of the blood-stained rose blade in Baiye's hand. He chuckled softly, fortunately. I'm not just some ordinary level 10 priest. Before Baiye could finish speaking, a sharp, piercing sound suddenly rang out, instantly interrupting his muttering to himself. Suddenly, the soul-eating cat's originally thick and powerful tail unexpectedly grew to more than 5 meters long, like a flexible yet deadly whip, lashing fiercely towards Baiye. At the same time, several extremely sharp bone spikes sprang out from its tail end, carrying a fierce gust of wind and whistled straight toward Baiye's ear. Faced with such a sudden and extremely dangerous attack, Baiye remained calm and composed. He swiftly turned and with the grace of a dancer stepped onto the edge of the altar. Immediately afterwards, he swung his long sword with lightning speed, accurately severing the oncoming tail. According to the game, skills like sword intent and saber intent can deal true damage. Therefore, Baiye was able to sever the opponent's tail in one strike the instant it attacked. Surprisingly, the blood that gushed from the severed tail was neither bright red nor pitch black. Instead, a thick, pitch-black fog as black as ink continuously gushed out from the broken opening. Even more terrifying and horrifying, within this eerie black mist, one could vaguely discern distorted and grotesque human faces. They were either gritting their teeth or glaring angrily, baring their claws and fangs, as if they might break free from the black mist's grasp at any moment. They pounced on Baiye, launching a new attack that was even more terrifying and horrifying than before. Seeing this, Baiye retreated rapidly, using a strange footwork to weave through the attacks of these evil spirits. He continuously swung the blood-stained rose in his hand, eliminating all the evil spirits one by one with each strike. Within just 10 seconds, all the evil spirits were vanquished, but then... A meow! Meow, a piercing scream, seemingly capable of penetrating the soul, rang out, instantly making the already dimly lit environment even more eerie and terrifying. The sound was as if it came from the deepest hell, sending chills down one's spine. Suddenly, Edmund's face on the cat's head opened its mouth, and the sound waves emanating from it rolled in like surging ocean waves. The powerful force caused the moonflowers to collapse to the ground as if ravaged by a gale. Just then, Baiye nimbly rolled quickly among the obstacles, and in the blink of an eye, he hid behind a pillar. His movements were fluid and effortless. Without hesitation, he swung his hand back, and 3 gleaming silver knives flew out of his grasp. These knives were spoils of war that Byakuya obtained from the kitchen. They not only possessed the essence of sharpness, but were also coated with moonlight grass solution. The moment they came into contact with the fur of the soul-eating cat, the moongrass sap exploded, forming clusters of dazzling silver flames. At the same time, Baiye whispered, "Mental interference." Finally, he used his priest skill in the battle. With the powerful boost of intermediate proficiency, the effect of mental interference was like an invisible hammer, smashing down on the head of the soul-eater cat with overwhelming force. However, despite Baiye's high level of proficiency with this skill, against a soul-eating cat whose level was far superior to his, this attack could only confuse it for half a second. But that half second of hesitation was a rare opportunity for Baiye. He gripped the weeping rose tightly in his hand, gathering all his strength into it. The crying rose instantly transformed into a crimson lightning bolt, striking the soul-eating cat's left forelimb joint with lightning speed. With a muffled thud, the blade struck the tendon precisely. In an instant, a jet-black line of blood spurted out like a fountain. Upon seeing this, Baiye quickly dodged to the side, worried that the blood of the soul-eating cat was also corrosive. The soul-slaying blade's blood-weeping rose release had a miraculous effect. Baiye stared intently at his opponent, clearly seeing how, after being injured, the opponent swiftly mobilized soul energy to cover the wound, attempting to heal. However, due to the effects of the sanctions, its recovery speed was unusually slow, even slower than when it was a level 10 wraith hound in the servants' quarters. Despite this, the soul-eating cat seemed completely oblivious to the pain, and in the blink of an eye, it pounced on Baiye again like lightning. Its astonishing speed contrasts sharply with its massive, mountain-like body, giving the impression of teleportation, making it impossible to defend against. Fortunately, Baiye possessed incredibly sharp combat instincts. Without hesitation, he rolled away, successfully avoiding the soul-eating cat's fierce attack. At the same time, he swung the blade in his hand, slashing a deep, gruesome wound across the soul-eating cat's lower abdomen. The soul-eating cat was severely injured and immediately let out a painful howl. With that scream, Its massive, heavy body crashed to the ground, the enormous impact smashing the surrounding wooden furniture to pieces, scattering wood chips everywhere, leaving a scene of utter chaos. Just then, a chilling scene unfolded. From the soul-eating cat's enormous body, four thick, powerful arms suddenly shot out. This is a human arm. These four arms stretched out like octopus tentacles, relentlessly attacking Baiye. Even though Baiye nimbly dodged, the floor beneath his feet continued to crack under the onslaught. Tusk, there are fewer and fewer places to stay. Just as the soul-eating cat's four arms smashed through the floor once again, the once peaceful moonlight grass field suddenly underwent an astonishing change. Then silver chains, like serpentine snakes, rapidly rose from the ground, shimmering with a mysterious light. It turns out that these silver chains were a defensive mechanism triggered by obsidian powder, but at this moment they unexpectedly became a temporary aid for Baiye. Without hesitation, Baiye pushed off with all his might, using the elasticity of the chains to leap high into the air. Immediately afterwards, the sharp blade in his hand flashed across the night sky like lightning, accurately slicing a gruesome wound 7 feet long along the soul-eating cat's spine. In an instant, countless twisted and grotesque faces gushed out from the enormous wound, emitting chilling screams. It should be about right, Baiye thought to himself. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly lunged forward, his feet moving in a strange and peculiar pattern. This seemingly chaotic movement allowed him to easily evade all the soul-eating cat's barrage of arm attacks. In the blink of an eye, Baiye had successfully appeared in front of the soul-eating cat. A flash of cold light, and one of the soul-eating cat's forelegs was flung into the air. However, Baiye did not stop attacking after his first strike. He merely dodged the crimson blood gushing out wildly from the severed limbs like a ghost. At the same instant, another strike was made. The soul-eating cat's 2 thick hind legs were also severed by this attack. Immediately afterwards, Baiye unleashed his final strike without hesitation. This strike was like lightning flashing across the night sky, so fast that it was almost impossible to see. As the blade flashed, the once majestic and massive body of the soul-eating cat crashed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Finally, we've taken care of this troublesome guy. Baiye let out a long breath and walked steadily toward the soul-eating cat lying on the ground. It was clear that even with his limbs severed, his ferocious face was still filled with madness and savagery. The tail, now only a third of its original length, lashed out again, only to be severed cleanly at the root by Baiye's blade. Then, with a cold gaze, he stared at the eerie human faces on the soul-eating cat and nailed them to death one by one with the weeping blood rose. After doing all this, Baiye carefully took out a bottle of moongrass solution that glowed faintly and slowly poured it along the blade into the ferocious mouth of the soul-eating cat. And then, with a calm and collected air, she called out the name Shirley Black. As the crystal-clear, mysteriously glowing moongrass solution slowly seeped into the soul-eating cat's throat, the once tranquil and peaceful flower field suddenly erupted into a frenzy, as if a bomb had been dropped on it. Countless silver light spots, like lively elves, emerged from the plants of moonflower. They leaped and danced in the air, eventually converging quickly to form a dazzling pillar of light that enveloped Edmund, who was positioned at the location of the Soul Eater's head. Surely, upon hearing this name, Edmund's face on the hideous cat head suddenly began to twist and distort violently without warning. The cat's originally cloudy pupils suddenly split open in the blink of an eye, revealing fine and eerie lines like those in human pupils. At the same time, he murmured in pain and confusion, What have I done?" However, in that split second, Edmund's consciousness, which seemed to have been lost for a long time, began to gradually return. Immediately afterwards, memories of his deceased wife Shirley, like old, yellowed yet incredibly clear paintings, began to replay before his eyes scene after scene. The first scene that catches the eye is of the two falling in love, getting to know each other and starting a family. They walked down the aisle together, filled with happiness. Afterwards, the two stayed together, and even though they didn't have any children, they were still incredibly happy. Finally, the scene ends with Sully being seriously ill. Lying on her sickbed, Shirley's face was as pale as paper, and her hand, which was tightly gripping Edmund's, seemed so weak. Each cough produced a drop of blood that mercilessly stained the exquisite lace pillowcase beneath her. "Promise me never again touch those terrible forbidden arts, my illness." As Shirley spoke in a weak voice, she placed his trembling hand on a sandalwood box carved with a pattern of weeping roses. "This is a precious sword I secretly bought from an Eastern merchant. It can save me." As that memory faded, another scene began to flash through Edmund's mind. Charles, with his hunched back, was bowing respectfully and carefully holding an ancient book titled The Record of Soul Reincarnation in both hands, slowly handing it to Edmund. In the dimly lit, flickering basement, Edmund trembled as he secured Toby to the center of the alchemical array. As the silver scalpel sliced open his beloved dog's chest, he saw Shirley's phantom shatter in a pool of blood. As Edmund reminisces, the Soul Eater's body rapidly disintegrates. From the attic, chilling sounds echoed as Edmund's human soul was slowly and painstakingly peeled away from the hideous cat head. Now, looking at Edmund's soul again, it was found to be covered with countless cracks. What's even more chilling is that a strange black viscous liquid constantly seeps out from each of the deep and shallow cracks. These slimes seem to possess a life of their own, intertwining and weaving together to eventually form distorted and deformed human faces. Those children, John, Hank, Lily. Edmund screamed hysterically as he frantically scratched at his arm, which was visibly fading away. His voice was hoarse and low, as if it were being forced out of a dilapidated bellows, making it sound particularly grating. That damned book ... It completely controlled my consciousness, Before he could finish speaking, Edmund suddenly remembered something and abruptly shut his mouth. Perhaps it was only at this moment that he truly realized that, regardless of his initial intentions and reasons, he had already committed such a heinous crime, and any explanation or excuse had become meaningless. However, at this moment, another unexpected event occurred. With a loud bang, Edmund's right eye suddenly exploded, and a powerful surge of soul energy erupted from it. This power did not dissipate into nothingness, but instead rapidly condensed in the air, eventually transforming into a familiar yet utterly malevolent face. Charles the butler. Seeing this, Edmund was struck dumb. He stared blankly at the face in the air, muttering to himself, "So that's how it is." The record of soul reincarnation that Charles gave me was incomplete. He secretly tore out several key pages. Finally, he fell silent, his gaze slowly turning to Baiye, his lips trembling as he said, "Alan, thank you so much. You've given me a release. Do it, end my life. If you kill me and destroy that altar, the mist alchemy array Charles set up in this manor will disappear. There are still some valuable things in this manor. I can give them all to you." Baiye stood there quietly, listening to these words without saying a word. Then, silently raising the blood-stained rose that exuded an eerie aura, she walked step by step toward Edmund. However, just as Baiye walked up to Edmund, who had already given up and awaited death, suddenly reached out and tightly grasped the blade of the blood-stained rose. He gasped for breath, calling out haltingly, "Wait. I have something else to tell you. At Blackthorn Wharf, they're using soul-eating beasts to transport souls." As soon as he finished speaking, Edmund spat out a bronze case stained with blood. "This is my key to warehouse number 168 at Blackthorn Dock. It can open the dock's restricted area." After saying this, Edmund seemed to have used up the last of his strength, and his body went completely limp. Just then Baiye suddenly swung down the blood-weeping rose in his hand. In an instant, a cold light flashed, and along with the flash of the blade, a deep and melodious resonance like a requiem resounded. At the same time, the moonflowers that were originally scattered throughout the attic seemed to be summoned by some mysterious force, and they all transformed into silver butterflies and began to dance gracefully. "Ding, you have killed the boss-level unit. Soul Eater Cat Edmund, LV-15, gaining 2880 experience points. 180 experience points for killing a level 15 creature times 200% multiplier for killing a level 5 creature 8x experience for boss units." After observing all this, Baiye pondered for a long time before beginning to destroy the altar. Soon, when the altar had been completely destroyed, the mist that had been shrouding the manor began to dissipate, revealing the beautiful manor scenery that appeared exceptionally peaceful and serene under the moonlight. At that very instant, a system notification quietly reached Baiye's ears. After reading the system's reward notification, Baiye didn't linger. After putting the soul-eating cat's corpse back into his inventory, he left the dungeon. After all, the entire manor belongs to him now, and he can come anytime he wants, so there's not much need to rush to loot it. After clicking to exit the instance, Baiye returned to his room after a moment of confusion. He checked the time. He had spent about 5 hours in the instance, and it was only a little past 1 in the afternoon. Before Su Li returned, Baiye first checked his loot from the dungeon. While getting an S+ rating was within my expectations, I have to admit that the rewards from my very first dungeon were already quite substantial. Putting aside other rewards for now, if we add the experience gained from killing a soul-eating cat and 10 wraith hounds, I probably gained over 7,100 experience points from this dungeon run. 8 little wraith hounds, Hank 55x8, Tier 1 Wraith Hound John or Toby 336 points, Tier 1 Wraith Hound Lily 672 points. Soul Eater Cat Edmund 2880 points, completion reward 2800 points. Unfortunately, Baiye is a cultivator, and even before he awakened his memories, he never considered using experience to improve himself. Now that he has brought his mythical level comprehension specialty, Tao Spirit Sacred Heart, with him, there is no need for him to take such a shortcut. What if this strength gained through experience is a means for some unknown entity to control the player, and can be taken back at any time if it wants? In comparison, I feel more at ease using the strength I've cultivated myself. Of course, not using experience points to level up doesn't mean that all that experience is completely useless. In fact, the game Origins unlocks an additional lottery feature after players complete their first-tier job advancement. This feature requires neither players to spend money nor complete tasks. Players only need to consume a certain amount of experience points to participate in the lottery. Of course, for most players, experience points are not enough to level up and improve skill proficiency, so they would never be wasted on drawing prizes. But Baiye is a player who focuses on cultivation, so this feature, which allows him to spend excess experience points and has a chance to draw good items, is practically tailor-made for him. Then there's the money aspect. Putting aside the items he's collected, the 25-20 silver coins rewarded from the Tongguang dungeon, which can be converted into 25 gold coins and 20 silver coins through the game system, are already enough for him to buy the equipment and items Su Li needs. After deducting these necessary expenses, Baiye planned to use the remaining money to buy some specific materials and try to make Moongrass solution herself. After all, he now not only has the formula and precise experimental procedures for Moongrass solution, but more importantly, he also owns an entire field of Moongrass flowers, which can provide him with a continuous supply of the main material. Baiye was well aware of the effects of the Moonflower herb solution, although its effects were not particularly outstanding among many potions. However, its ability to restore sanity is of undeniable value. In those Cthulhu-themed dungeons, players constantly face the risk of their sanity dropping and driving them into madness. In this situation, many players who undertake dispatch missions will carry some potions to restore sanity. Therefore, my own Moonflower extract should fetch a good price on the market. If he could really make money by making Moongrass solution, then he wouldn't need to frequently match those dispatch mission instances anymore. The time saved can not only be used to gain a deeper understanding of the world, but more importantly, it can allow me to focus more energy on my current path of priesthood and improve my abilities. Then there are special rewards, the Black Manor title deed and a dungeon exit ticket. According to the system description, Blake's land deed is based on the system rules. Once a player obtains an S or higher rating in a dungeon, they will permanently gain the qualification to travel to this world. This land deed is the key item that allows him to come to this world at any time. As for the copy exit ticket, item dungeon exit ticket. Rank first rank. Quality nuns. Type disposable consumable. Description, an emergency exit item based on the security settings of the dispatch mission dungeons in the game Origins. It has a chance to drop when the dungeon rating is A or higher. The higher the rating, the higher the probability. Effect used mentally immediately exits the current instance. Current level decreases by 1 upon use. Note, only applicable to dungeons with a recommended level of 20 or below. Without a doubt, this is an item that can be used to save lives in emergency situations during dispatch missions. If a player encounters any insurmountable danger in a dungeon, having this dungeon exit ticket allows them to safely return to reality, at the cost of only losing 1 level. Upon seeing the effect of the dungeon exit ticket, Baiye immediately logged into the Origin game forum and searched for related information, especially its value. When Baiye learned that this thing was actually worth more than 200 gold coins and was in high demand but not available, he clicked his tongue and almost had the idea of selling it. But he was just thinking about it. After all, he needed this kind of life-saving device, and he just wasn't too concerned about death right now, which didn't mean he actually wanted to die. Afterwards, Baiye sorted out the other valuable items he had looted from the dungeon, such as the soul-slaying blade, the blood-weeping rose, the soul reincarnation record, Moonlight Grass solution and its recipe, the corpse of the soul-eating cat, 2 first-tier Wraith Hound corpses, and 8 level 10 Wraith Hound corpses. Among them, the soul-slaying blade, the crying blood rose, is an evolving piece of equipment that Baiye intends to use as a long-term backup weapon. After slaying 6 level 10 Wraith Hounds, 1 elite Wraith Hound, and 1 Soul Eater Cat, the sword looked even more eerie, with both its attack power and durability receiving a slight increase. And it seems this is just the beginning. Baiye can sense that it seems to crave more blood and souls. If it can be fed, its quality may see a significant breakthrough. As for the record of soul reincarnation, even if Baiye didn't intend to sell it, legitimate businesses wouldn't dare accept something that looked so sinister. They might even report it and confiscate it. As for the Moonflower solution formula, he planned to see how much it could fetch later. He also planned to dismantle the corpses of the soul-eating cat and the Wraith Hound to see what he could sell. Because her own bathroom was too small, Baiye had no choice but to rest on the bed for a while before returning to Black Manor. Standing once again in the attic of Black's Manor, the midnight moonlight bathed the somber building in a silvery glow. He retrieved knives from the tool shed and spread a waterproof tarpaulin on the open ground next to the cemetery. The soul-eating cat's corpse lost its luster, and when its chest cavity was ripped open, a wisp of black smoke escaped and quickly disappeared into the air. Baiye carefully removed a crystal from its heart. The crystal, the size of an infant's fist, refracted an unusual brilliance in the sunlight. Subsequently, under his manipulation, the 2 eyeballs, 4 fangs, and 20 claws were also completely removed. Dealing with the vengeful hound was relatively simple, but the stench still made him frown. The 2 Tier 1 individuals produced small soul crystals, some rotten canines, and hardened claws. As for the 8 ordinary individuals, apart from their eyeballs, their rotten bodies were not even edible. After completing the task, Baiye burned the body and buried the remains in a pre-dug grave. The remains of the soul-eating cat were specially buried next to Mrs. Black's grave. Looking at the newly erected simple tombstone, he felt a strange sense of melancholy. Afterwards, Baiye searched the manor again, but apart from some precious metals, he didn't find anything that could fetch a good price. So he didn't linger and exited the instance. He still remembered that besides these gains, he also had an F-grade Eternal Treasure chest that he hadn't used yet. After seeing the effects of the Eternal Treasure chest, Baiye was completely stunned. Ultimate quality. Wait. In this game, aren't the game forums saying that the highest quality item is the perfect one? How come there's this ultimate quality thing now? Could it be that so few people can get an S+ rating on this dispatch mission, causing news of the premium quality items to be little known, and other factions are intentionally blocking it out? Baiye lay on the bed, his gaze fixed intently on the Eternal Treasure chest he had just taken from his system inventory. The treasure chest was made entirely of an unknown metal, with intricate runes engraved on its surface. Each line seemed to be flowing, emitting a faint silver light. Ultimate quality, he murmured, his fingers lightly tracing the edge of the treasure chest. If only I could get equipment or items of ultimate quality at Tier 3 or higher. After all, he was quite knowledgeable in the cultivation world. If it wasn't something of the 3rd rank or higher, he felt that it would be hard for him to be tempted no matter what he got from it. But just as he opened the treasure chest and saw the item he had drawn, Baiye realized. He was terribly wrong. As Baiye placed his hand on the lock of the treasure chest with a soft click, the chest slowly opened, and a dazzling light burst forth, illuminating the entire pavilion. Ding. You have opened the Eternal Treasure Chest, Rank F. Item obtained, Alina's Alchemy Notebook, Tier 1 Supreme. Item, Alina's Alchemy Notebook. Rank 1st rank 7th rank. Quality Supreme. Type Alchemy Notebooks. Recommended classes. Alchemist Wizard. Usage requirements. Spirit 36, Comprehension 120, Hidden Attribute. Item description. This notebook was written by Alina Darkmoon, a legendary alchemist of the Darkmoon Alchemy Society, the predecessor of the Eternal Night Society in ancient times. She was a pioneer in the field of alchemy, but due to a forbidden experiment, the notebook was lost, and her original 7th tier power gradually dissipated. The notebook records a wealth of alchemical knowledge and forbidden techniques, but because it is incomplete, its true power must be unlocked by sacrificing extraordinary alchemical knowledge. Item attributes. Spirit +6, weight 1 approx. 2.5 kg, durability 1800. Effect 1, Alchemy Library. Active, the holder can consume at least 100 points of spirit to resonate with the manuscript through their thoughts and draw their consciousness into Alina's Alchemy Library, which contains the lifelong collection of the great alchemist Alina Darkmoon. Effect 2, Alchemy Resonance passive, increases the holder's alchemy success rate by 10% to 20% and the quality of alchemical products by 5% to 10%. Upgrades will increase the effect. Effect 3, Knowledge Sacrifice Special, allows the sacrifice of extraordinary alchemical knowledge beyond what's already in the library, unlocking corresponding knowledge in the Alchemy Handbook. Once all Tier 1 alchemical knowledge in the library is fully unlocked, the Alchemy Handbook automatically upgrades to Tier 2 Supreme Quality. Holy crap, a Tier 7 Supreme Quality item. Baiye stared intently at the handbook in his hand, which glowed with a faint blue light, his breathing becoming rapid involuntarily. A 7th Tier Supreme Quality item, this would be considered a top-tier treasure even in the world of cultivation. If I'm not mistaken, the Divine Firmament Sword, the most treasured weapon of my sect, is probably only at the 7th rank. Immediately, a chill ran down his spine. The shadow of his previous 2 lives, where everything went smoothly in the beginning but ended with inexplicable deaths, either being hit by a car or struck by lightning, instantly enveloped his mind. Could I have caught it again? He bit his nails, while his other hand rapidly began to calculate. The Heavenly Secrets deduction technique, learned from the Cultivation world, flowed from his fingertips, and a mysterious aura formed miniature hexagrams in the room. Lifespan unharmed, fortune stable, strange. Baiye frowned as he looked at the results displayed by the divination and then tried 3 different methods of deduction. When the 7th measurement still showed normal results, he breathed a sigh of relief and collapsed onto the bed. The cold touch of the notebook came from his palm. Baiye stared blankly at the ceiling for a while, then suddenly laughed self-deprecatingly. Whatever, death is inevitable. With this go-with-the-flow mentality, Baiye actually made him feel much more relaxed. After adjusting his breathing, he focused his mind and activated the first effect of the journal. 100 points of mental energy were instantly drained, and a strong feeling of dizziness washed over me. When Baiye's consciousness reconverged, he found himself standing in front of a magnificent 7-story tower. The entire building is constructed of some kind of translucent crystal, emitting a faint blue light in the void. Looking up, only the first floor was lit with soft light, while the 6 floors above were shrouded in thick fog. "Welcome to the Darkmoon Library." A cool female voice came from behind. Baiye suddenly turned around and saw a silver-haired woman with an ethereal face floating in midair. She wore an elaborate dark purple alchemical robe, her body was semi-transparent, and her eyes flickered with eerie blue flames. "Master Alina." Baiye cautiously took a half-step back, his right hand quietly behind his back, gathering a sword intent. "No need to be nervous." The woman's projection landed gently, her long robe fluttering even without wind. "This is merely a fragment of my consciousness left in my journal. My true self vanished during the 7th voyage through the stars." She turned and walked toward the library door, and Baiye noticed that her feet were not actually touching the ground. "Come with me, let me show you this treasure trove of knowledge." As the heavy bronze gate opened automatically, the scene inside made Baiye gasp. Countless bookshelves were arranged in a ring, stretching to the horizon, but strangely, all the bookshelves were shrouded in a layer of gray mist, and the books on them seemed to be bound by invisible chains. "As you can see, this is where I have collected all the alchemical knowledge I have accumulated throughout my life." Alina's projection raised her hand and gently stroked the nearest bookshelf, causing the mist to ripple slightly. "But they are all sealed now." Baiye approached a bookshelf and tried to pull out the book labeled Methods of Elemental Essence Purification, but the book did not budge. He increased the pressure, and suddenly dark red chain patterns appeared on the spine of the book. "Don't waste your energy," Alina chuckled. "Each book here requires corresponding knowledge to unlock." She floated in front of Baiye, lightly tapping the alchemical journal in his hand with her finger. "Bind it and then you can unlock knowledge through sacrifice. This can be a physical book or your unique insights into alchemy." Baiye thoughtfully stroked the cover of the journal. "How exactly does it work?" "It's very simple." Alina snapped her fingers and the journal automatically flipped to the last page, revealing a complex transmutation circle. "Place the vessel of knowledge here, or," she turned to the title page where there was a hand-shaped recess. "Place your hand there and recall the knowledge you wish to sacrifice." Baiye suddenly thought of something. What if the knowledge library I sacrificed already contains it? A clever question. Alina nodded approvingly. "That would cause the sacrifice to fail, but don't worry, the journal will provide a hint." Upon hearing this, Baiye shrugged. He knew he couldn't exploit the bug. He'd been thinking that if he unlocked the knowledge in this library, comprehended it, and then sacrificed himself, he could create an infinite loop. Suddenly, Alina floated high up, her robes billowing like the wings of a night owl. "Remember, each time you fully unlock a certain area of knowledge on a floor, the journal will grant you a blessing. When the first floor is fully unlocked." Before she could finish speaking, her figure suddenly began to flicker. "Time's up." Alina's projection showed a regretful expression. "This library has lost its power. I can't stay lucid for much longer. I hope that next time you come in, you can bring some interesting knowledge." As the last echo faded, only Baiye remained in the vast library. He glanced around at the sealed treasure trove of knowledge, his lips twitching slightly. "No way, you're going to play the riddle maker like this. At least finish what you have to say before you leave." What happens when the first layer is fully unlocked? The journal evolves, but isn't all this information about the props clearly written out? Why bother with a riddle? However, he was quite interested in what Alina said about the blessing the journal would give him for each area unlocked. I wonder what kind of blessing this is. As consciousness returned to reality, Baiye glanced at the wall clock. It was 4:30 p.m. and the sunlight outside the window was already tinged with a faint orange hue. He rubbed his temples. The slight dizziness from the depletion of his mental energy hadn't completely subsided. I need to hurry, Baiye muttered to himself, taking the book, The Record of Soul Reincarnation, out of his backpack. The book The Record of Soul Reincarnation lay quietly on the desk, its black cover gleaming eerily in the setting sun. Baiye picked up the book and then opened the alchemy notebook. The moment the two books touched, the notebook immediately glowed faintly, and a line of text appeared. Advanced Alchemical Knowledge Soul Reincarnation Record detected. Estimated unlock progress of the first tier of life alchemy area. 12.3%. Warning, the original text will be lost after the sacrifice. You can view it at the alchemy library. Should we offer a sacrifice immediately? Baiye's fingers traced the pages for a moment before finally separating the two books. Wow, you've unlocked so much, but don't rush, let me study it first. After all, without the written text, the value of this record of soul reincarnation will be drastically reduced. He carefully put the two books into his backpack. After all, the alchemy recorded in the record of soul reincarnation was considered advanced knowledge, and rashly offering a sacrifice might cause him to miss crucial details. After changing into casual clothes, Baiye hurriedly went out. The streets were getting busier in the evening, and in the distance, the magic bus stop was flashing with pale blue runes. While waiting for the bus, he opened the system interface to double-check the shopping list. The hunter's shortbow that Su Li needed, 3 Tier 1 health potions, 3 Tier 1 mana potions, and 3 Tier 1 stamina potions. Beeped with a crisp whistle, a pure silver-white magic bus came to a smooth stop. The flowing runes on the car body were particularly striking in the twilight, and the doors opened upwards like wings. Baiye boarded the train with 10 copper coins and found a window seat. The bus slowly rose into the air, passing through the magical airway above the city. Looking out the window, the entire commercial district was brightly lit, with countless neon signs lighting up one after another as the sky darkened. A giant holographic projection floats atop the towering alchemical tower, showcasing the latest mega-alchemical apparatus. In the shop windows lining both sides of the street, various magical items slowly rotated within protective shields. Pedestrians dressed in various styles moved among them. Some carried glowing longswords, while others had spellbooks floating above their heads. Baiye stared blankly at the bustling scene, only snapping out of her reverie when the bus announced its arrival at the stop. Hopefully I can get this sorted out before Su Li gets home, he muttered to himself, quickly blending into the bustling crowd. As Baiye stepped through the ancient gate of Star Radiance Appraisal Shop, the bronze door knocker swayed gently behind him. Inside the hall, a dozen or so rosewood appraisal tables are neatly arranged, each with various appraisal tools on it. He walked toward counter number 3, where a young appraiser who looked to be under 20 and had a ponytail was pouting and reluctantly wiping a crystal lens. Wow, so young and already an appraiser. Well, I'll have to see for myself how it goes. Let's see what's going on here. What materials do you need tested? The young girl asked without looking up, her voice clear but with a hint of nonchalance. Baiye placed 2 sealed glass jars on a black velvet cloth. Inside the jars, a pale blue orb of light slowly rotated, casting shimmering light onto the tabletop. The little girl suddenly stopped moving. She looked up, her eyes sparkling like 2 black gems. She adjusted her glasses and carefully picked up a glass jar, holding it up to the light source to observe it. Wow! High-purity soul crystals, she exclaimed softly, tapping the jar gently with her fingers. The energy structure is remarkably complete. Excitedly, she took a staff inlaid with moonstone from the drawer and drew several runes on the top of the jar. Tier 1 Elite Unit Soul Attribute Enhancement. A pale blue light emanated from the tip of the staff, and the little girl's voice was full of surprise. This one costs 5 gold coins, that one is of better quality, 6 gold coins. Baiye noticed that when the appraiser said this, his right hand unconsciously gripped the ornament on the staff, a habitual little gesture that appraisers make when confirming prices. The girl then laid out the extracted eyeballs on the velvet cloth, gently manipulating them with silver tweezers, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Ordinary undead attribute eyeballs, 1 gold coin a pair. She then pointed to 2 larger pairs, her eyes shining even brighter. These 2 pairs have stronger energy fluctuations, 3 gold coins a pair. When Baiye unfolded the last 2 silk packages, the little girl's breath hitched noticeably. Inside one of the packages, 20 metallic black claws lay quietly on deep purple silk, each claw tip shrouded in a faint black mist. The other package contained 32 slightly rough and hardened fingernails. The young girl immediately pulled the soundproof curtains around the appraisal table, put on special obsidian gloves, and carefully picked up one of the claws from the first package and placed it on the special scales. Wow. Claws that can cut through spirits. Her voice lowered unconsciously, barely concealing her excitement. 5 gold coins, all of them. She then pointed to the others. Those are 2 gold coins. At this moment, Baiye interjected. Wait a minute, miss. These things are all excellent materials for crafting soul-type daggers. Even if the quality they produce isn't super high, the price shouldn't be this low, right? The young woman frowned, adjusted her glasses, and gave a wry smile. You're right, sir, but there's a serious oversupply of these materials on the market lately. She lowered her voice as if sharing a little secret with Baiye. A new dungeon opened in the Undead Valley last month, and it produces a lot of similar materials. Baiye narrowed his eyes. But mine is produced by Boss's unit. How can the quality be the same? It's definitely different. The little girl picked up a claw and gently ran a special silver needle across its surface, instantly sparking a string of eerie blue sparks. Ordinary items wouldn't produce this kind of soul resonance reaction. The young girl hesitated for a moment, then took out a crystal abacus from under the counter and clicked away. How about this? Claws 8 gold coins, hardened nails 3 gold coins. This is already the highest price in the industry. Baiye noticed that when the appraiser said this, his eyes unconsciously glanced at a notice on the wall, which read urgent acquisition of high-quality soul materials. 10 gold coins and 4 gold coins. Baiye slowly began to repackage the materials. Or I'll go ask the Moonlight Merchant Guild next door. Wait, the young girl quickly pressed down on the package, clicking her tongue with a hint of regret. All right, you win, it'll be the price you said. Baiye pretended to think for a few seconds before reluctantly nodding. Deal. The little girl breathed a sigh of relief and quickly took out 37 gold coins from the game panel. Baiye took the heavy bag of gold coins, his fingertips gently tracing the Starshin Merchant Guild emblem embroidered on its surface. The young girl suddenly leaned closer and asked in a low voice, Sir, you should still have the boss's core, right? If possible, I'm willing to offer 20 gold coins to buy it. Baiye's lips curled into a perfectly timed wry smile. You overestimate me. I only got a taste of the good stuff. Of course, they took all the good stuff. A flicker of disappointment crossed the young woman's eyes, but she still handed over a gold-embossed business card. How about this? You can access my profile through this card. My contact information is there. You can add me, and if you have any good materials, you can contact me through my contact information. Baiye took the business card and glanced at it. The card was entirely blue and crystalline with only one name on it, Xing Yuyan, but after clicking on the name, a game's homepage appeared before Baiye's eyes. He nodded. Okay, I'll add you on WeChat as soon as possible. Stepping out of the appraisal shop, Baiye merged into the bustling crowd. The neon lights of the commercial street stretched his shadow long, and the magical signs of each shop competed for attention in the night sky. He visited several weapon shops and finally stopped in front of a shop called Frostblade Workshop. The shop window displays a variety of ice attribute weapons, which gleam with a faint blue light under the lamp. Welcome, a young salesperson in a blue uniform greeted us warmly. What type of weapon do you need? Baiye's gaze swept across the display shelf. Tier 1 Ice Attribute Hunter's Shortbow, high quality required. The salesman's eyes lit up, and he quickly walked to the inner display case. You've come at the right time, we just received a new batch of goods. He took out 3 long wooden boxes and arranged them one by one on the glass counter. This is a common quality frost shortbow, 10 gold coins. He opened the first box. Inside was a crudely made shortbow with only simple ice runes on its surface. Baiye shook his head after just one glance. Even if his family was poor, he had never considered letting Su Lei use ordinary quality equipment before. The salesman understood and immediately opened the second box. This excellent quality raven bow, 18 gold coins, crafted from northern cedar wood, inlaid with an ice crystal. Baiye reached out and gently stroked the bowstring, feeling a slight chill on his fingertips. Although the quality was good, the one Su Li was currently using was excellent, he still turned his attention to the last box. Well, it's not that he dotes on his sister with whom he doesn't get along, it's just that her level is about to increase and the power of his high-quality equipment might gradually become insufficient. Rather than buying a high-quality one now and then upgrading to a premium one later, he might as well just buy her a premium one to make her happy. The salesman smiled knowingly and carefully opened the third box. Premium-grade ice soul, with a bowstring made of snow mountain ice spider silk and an inlaid 30-year-old ice soul stone. He lowered his voice, it just arrived yesterday. There's only one like it in the entire Jiangbei area. Baiye picked up the short bow. The bow was cool to the touch but not piercing. When he gently plucked the bowstring, tiny ice crystals condensed in the air. How much? Well, 50 gold coins. The salesman rubbed his hands together. This price is already very fair. Baiye glanced at him, then put the short bow back in the box. He hadn't earned this much money on this dungeon run, so he simply slashed the price a little. A 20. What? The salesman's eyes widened. Dude, how can you bargain like that? Everyone else only cuts the price in half. Top-tier weapons don't go for this price. Few people in the south use ice attribute weapons, so this bow will only depreciate in value if left unused for too long, Baiye said calmly. 22, that's the most I can offer. The salesman's forehead beaded with sweat. The lowest price is 45 and I'll throw in 10 cold iron arrows. The two traded blows back and forth, eventually settling on a price of 28 gold coins, with the other party also having to contribute 30 matching frost arrows. The salesman, looking dejected, exclaimed, "You're the best bargainer I've ever met. I'm losing money on this sale." Baiye curled his lip. Having practiced bargaining for 2.5 years, he could tell at a glance that the other party had definitely made a small profit from this deal. I deliberately bargained like this to leave some room for the other party. Getting it down to 28 gold coins plus 30 matching arrows is already the limit. Baiye put away the ice soul shortbow with satisfaction, then turned and blended into the crowd on the commercial street. Neon lights cast shifting colors on his face, and the calls of vendors from various shops rose and fell in his ears. He deliberately slowed his pace, his eyes scanning every pharmacy on the street. Most of the shops here seem rather ordinary. They simply sell pre-made potions and are nothing special. However, as he walked to the street corner, a small shop called Green Vine Alchemy caught his attention. The shop wasn't large, but through the window, he could see that the interior was very neatly arranged, and it was filled with all sorts of oddly shaped glass bottles and metal utensils. More importantly, he saw a middle-aged pharmacist wearing gold-rimmed glasses standing behind the counter, intently preparing a bottle of medicine. The pharmacist's technique was highly skilled. His movements were precise and swift, like an experienced artist creating a precious work of art. Baiye's eyes lit up and he smiled. This is it. Without hesitation, Baiye pushed open the shop door and the doorbell rang crisply, as if welcoming his arrival. The pharmacist seemed unfazed by the sudden interruption. He didn't even look up, simply saying, "Look around for what you need. The price list is on the wall." Baiye didn't respond immediately. He first glanced at the price list on the wall, then slowly walked to the counter and said, "I need 10 bottles of Tier 1 common life potions, but I have a special request." Upon hearing the word special request, the pharmacist finally raised his head, his gaze falling on Baiye through his glasses. "What are the requirements?" Baiye said somewhat embarrassedly. "It's just, I'd like to observe your process of concocting life-saving potions." "Impossible," the pharmacist's answer was crisp and decisive. "You think you can see my secret techniques for a mere 3 gold coins?" Baiye seemed to have anticipated this, and he calmly said, "Add 10 more bottles of Tier 1 magic potions." The pharmacist paused slightly, clearly finding the offer somewhat tempting. First-tier magic potions are more expensive than life potions, costing 50 silver coins per bottle. This means that Baiye has suddenly increased the total value of his business to 8 gold coins. However, the pharmacist didn't immediately agree. He adjusted his glasses, looked sharply at Baiye and shook his head firmly. Still not enough. Baiye's lips curled into a slight smile. "What if we added 10 bottles of energy potions?" Energy potions are more expensive than magic potions, costing 60 silver coins per bottle, which immediately increases the total price to 14 gold coins. The pharmacist's eyes lit up, but he didn't immediately respond. Instead, he remained silent for a moment, seemingly deep in thought. Finally, he put down the mortar and pestle, carefully examined Baiye, and then slowly asked, "Why did you want to see the preparation process?" Baiye's smile remained harmless as he honestly replied, "I'm very interested in alchemy and have always wanted to learn the techniques of professionals." The pharmacist hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. "Deal, but you can only look, not record, and you can't ask questions." Baiye smiled and nodded, but inwardly he had already silently activated the Tao Spirit Sacred Heart Enlightenment mode. Specialty: Taoist Spiritual Sacred Heart. Rank Mythical. Introduction: The Spirit of the Great Tao, the Heart of the Sage. Specialty Effect 1: Favored by the Great Tao. You are born with an affinity for all Taos. When you comprehend any Tao, your affinity for all elements is forcibly fixed at 90%, and this affinity will gradually increase as the comprehension time increases. Faction Effect 2: Sage's Wisdom. You possess an innate talent for deduction. When focusing on learning skills, you have the ability to remember everything you see and to make sudden, intuitive deductions. As you learn, you will gradually comprehend related learning-related factions, up to epic level. Faction Effect 3. Faction Effect 6. A barely perceptible golden glint appeared deep within his pupils, and the entire world suddenly became incredibly clear in his eyes. As a mythical-level comprehension specialty, the effects of the Tao Spirit's sacred heart are utterly unreasonable. Every subtle movement of the apothecary, the proportion of each ingredient, and even the trajectory of the magic flow were clearly visible to Baiye. If Baiye were to add the legendary-level comprehension feat of Mind's Eye, he wouldn't even need to know what the ingredients for making the potion were. Just by watching the process, he could perfectly replicate the steps the other person took the next time he tried it himself. Specialty Telepathy. Rank Legendaries. Introduction: A meeting of minds, seeing is believing. Specialty Effect 1. When you are learning, you have the ability to remember everything you see and to integrate what you have memorized, increasing your learning efficiency by 800%. Specialty Effect 2. Can forcibly learn skills and techniques seen with one's own eyes. Learning ability plus 400%. Specialty Effect 3. For knowledge and abilities you have already learned, you can consume mental energy to forcibly deduce to a higher level. Deduce ability plus 400%. Faction Effect 4. With two exceptional talents in comprehension, he's definitely going to steal this master's skills today. Let's start with the life potion, the pharmacist said calmly, then took a transparent crystal flask from an exquisite wooden box and placed it on the lab table. Watch closely, I'll only demonstrate once and I won't slow it down. Whether you understand it or not is none of my business, the pharmacist said with a slight, enigmatic smile. Baiye dared not be negligent in the slightest. He kept his eyes fixed on the pharmacist's every move, afraid of missing any crucial step. The apothecary carefully picked up a bottle of rotten defolia juice and slowly poured it into a crystal flask. At the same time, his right hand began to gently shake the flask at a specific frequency, as if performing a graceful dance. With the powerful skills Dao Ling Sheng Xin and Mind's Eye, Baiye not only deeply imprinted every action of the pharmacist in his mind, but also saw through the underlying principles. It turns out that the frequency of shaking the flask is to allow the medicinal properties in the rotundus juice to fully integrate, while the timing of adding the silver leaf powder determines the stability of the medicinal effect. Baiye's attention became even more focused as the apothecary began concocting the magic potion. He discovered that after adding the powder of the shadow flower stamen, the pharmacist secretly took a small pinch of blue powder from a hidden box and quickly threw it into the flask. This small cluster of blue crystals dissolved rapidly in the flask and blended perfectly with the other materials. If Baiye hadn't possessed extremely keen senses, an ordinary person probably wouldn't have been able to detect this minute detail at all. However, none of this escaped Baiye's eyes. He immediately realized that this was the secret to the shop's exceptionally effective magic potions, deep-sea salt crystals. This precious material can slightly increase the speed of magic regeneration, which can be a decisive factor in battle. Even though he had never learned about alchemical materials, he happened to recognize this deep-sea salt essence, having seen it by chance while browsing a forum. An hour later, Baiye walked out of the shop carrying a leather bag full of medicine. The sun had completely sunk below the horizon, and the magical lights of the commercial street lit up one after another. He not only acquired the necessary medicines, but also memorized the perfect formulas for the 3 basic medicines. It's time to go back. Baiye glanced at the time. It was already 7:30 and Su Li was probably already home by now. He quickened his pace toward the station, the night breeze carrying the distinctive herbal scent of the medicine. In the distance, the blue runes of the magic bus stood out prominently in the night. Baiye pushed open the door. And the room was silent, with the magic lamp in the living room emitting a soft light. Su Li was curled up on the sofa, engrossed in her book. When she heard the door open, she only glanced up slightly before lowering her head again, remaining silent. Baiye placed the bag of medicine on the coffee table and casually said, "I'm back." He then took a long box containing a short bow from his backpack and gently placed it in front of her. "For you." Su Li's fingers trembled slightly as she slowly raised her head, her eyes filled with suspicion. "What is it?" "See for yourself." Baiye didn't care, turned around and walked to the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water. I heard the soft sound of a box being opened behind me, followed by a brief silence. A moment later, Su Li's voice came through, clearly showing surprise. "This is a premium grade." Baiye returned with a water glass, only to see Su Li carefully stroking the ice sole short bow, her eyes gleaming with disbelief. The bowed figure shimmered with a faint blue halo, and under the lamplight Su Li's fair face appeared even more gentle. Hmm. Baiye took a sip of water and explained, "Anyway, your level is about to increase, and you'll need to replace your high-quality weapon sooner or later." Su Li looked up, her blue-gray eyes meeting his directly. "How much does this cost?" 28 gold coins plus 30 arrows, Baiye said casually, then pointed to a potion pouch beside him. Inside are 5 each of the life, mana, and stamina potions you requested. Although the other party only needed 3 bottles, Baiye still gave her 2 extra bottles in case of emergency, as he himself also needed the rest. Su Li's lips trembled slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she only whispered, "Thank you." "You're welcome. Your hard work in getting into a vocational college is more important than any words of thanks." Baiye put down his water glass and said, "I'm going back to my room now." With that, he turned and headed for the stairs. Behind her came the soft sound of a bowstring being plucked, and Su Li's almost inaudible exclamation. Such a strong affinity for ice elements. Back in her room, Baiye closed the door and let out a long sigh. Outside the window, the blue taillights of the magic bus streaked across the night sky like a shooting star. He took out the medicines and materials he had bought that day and arranged them neatly on his desk. Although his relationship with Su Li remained somewhat distant, at least she should like that bow. Baiye thought to himself, shook his head, temporarily putting these thoughts aside, and then began to organize the potion formulas he had secretly learned today. At that moment, moonlight streamed in through the window, casting dappled shadows on his focused profile. He closed his eyes and meticulously memorized the potion ingredients he had seen that day. Only after firmly remembering the names and appearances of all the ingredients did he begin to deduce the formulas for the 3 alchemical potions. If the game system could display his deduction status, it might pop up a notification. Zing! You have unlocked the mythical level comprehension specialization Sacred Heart of the Tao, and are currently deducing the creation of a Tier 1 life potion. You notice that while the pharmacist's technique was skillful, there were still many areas for improvement. Your Tier 1 life potion crafting proficiency has been upgraded to beginner. You begin comparing the life-saving potions of this world with the healing elixirs of the cultivation world, discovering that they share a similar effect. Through master-level alchemy skills, you gain a deeper understanding. Your Tier 1 life potion crafting proficiency has increased to intermediate. Unfortunately, although the game system of Origins is a system, it exists in the minds of every player on Azure Star, and it does not provide any information other than the necessary information for combat. With the comprehension of Dao Ling Sheng Xin, and after several hours of deduction, Baiye has raised his proficiency in making the 3 potions to 99% of the intermediate level. Furthermore, with the knowledge of making the 3 potions, a knowledge-based skill called Advanced Alchemy quietly appeared on his panel, although its proficiency was pitifully low, only at the beginner level. The reason for his low proficiency is mainly because he is completely ignorant of basic potion alchemy. Despite such a lack of knowledge, the fact that the Dao Ling Sacred Heart could still raise the proficiency of 3 potion-making techniques to 99% of the intermediate level, while only reaching the beginner level in Advanced Alchemy, is already enough to prove the extraordinary nature of the Dao Ling Sacred Heart. After learning how to make these 3 potions, I can now earn a stable income even without making Moonflower solution to sell. Of course, after secretly learning how to make the 3 potions, Baiye also took out the Moonlight Grass solution and consulted the apothecary boss. After checking, the other party said that there are very few potions on the market that can restore sanity, and this thing is only commonly kept by players who need to carry out dispatch missions, so its use is not very widespread. Therefore, he offered a purchase price of 80 silver coins. If the quality was excellent, it was worth only 50 silver coins, and if it was ordinary, it was worth 30 silver coins. By working backward from the acquisition price to the selling price, Baiye can roughly determine the value of the Moonflower herb solution. A common quality coin is worth about 60 silver coins, a good quality coin is worth 1 gold coin, and a fine quality coin is worth 1.5 gold coins. Its value is roughly equivalent to that of an energy potion. When he has time, he can go to the Alchemist's Guild and get certified as a Tier 1 potion alchemist, then he can openly use these skills to make money. After deducing the effects of the 3 potions, Baiye took out the alchemy manual and his consciousness re-entered the Dark Moon Library. This time, Alina's consciousness projection did not appear. After a moment of contemplation, Baiye retrieved the alchemy manual in his consciousness again and placed his hand on it. Low-level alchemy knowledge detected, first-tier life potion crafting. Estimated unlock progress of the first tier of alchemy and potion area. 3.3%. Warning, after the sacrifice, you will lose half of your understanding of the knowledge-based skill, Tier 1 life potion crafting. Should we offer a sacrifice immediately? Oh yes. As Baiye's low reply fell, he instantly felt that his understanding of first-order life potion making had become much more blurred. He quickly checked his game panel and found that his Tier 1 life potion crafting proficiency had dropped from 99% intermediate to 31% intermediate. He pondered for a moment, then muttered to himself thoughtfully, so the so-called sacrifice of half of one's enlightenment means taking away half of one's experience. Makes sense. However, 3,300 experience points only unlocked 3.3% of the alchemy and potion area, meaning that unlocking one area requires sacrificing a total of 100,000 experience points in alchemy knowledge skills. Alina's Darkmoon Library divides alchemy into 9 branches: potion alchemy, mechanical alchemy, array alchemy, rune alchemy, blacksmithing alchemy, energy alchemy, life alchemy, creation alchemy, and forbidden alchemy. If each branch requires 100,000 experience points to fully unlock, then even if others obtain this alchemy manual, it will be difficult for them to restore its power. Unless it's a grand ceremony of some secret academic organization, where a group of people take turns offering sacrifices, or a large-scale search for alchemical knowledge books like the Book of Soul Reincarnation for offering. However, Soul Reincarnation record is already of high quality, and even so, it can only provide 12.3% of the unlock progress for the Life Alchemy branch. It is quite difficult to improve the level of the manual through this path. Fortunately, he possessed extraordinary comprehension. The knowledge, skills, and experience he gained through enlightenment in a single night were absurd enough to barely meet the requirements of the alchemy manual. However, just as Baiye was using deduction to push his proficiency in making first-tier life potions back to intermediate level 99%, and was about to perform the sacrifice again. The alchemy manual, however, states that the same type of alchemical knowledge cannot be sacrificed repeatedly unless the knowledge skill proficiency reaches the next level. Tusk no nesting dolls huh. However, this was within his expectations, so he didn't hesitate and sacrificed the knowledge of making the other 3 potions as well. A warm atmosphere filled Sulei's room. The warm yellow light from the table lamp cast a soft glow, enveloping the entire room in a cozy glow. Several faded old photos are pasted on the wall. They are family photos taken when my parents were still alive. The family in the photos are all smiling and full of happiness. At this moment, Sulei lay lazily on the soft bed, her 2 toes swinging gently in the air as if dancing to some rhythm. Holding a multifunctional holographic watch in her hands, she was chatting enthusiastically with her friend Zaya, their laughter occasionally emanating from the holographic screen. Ali. Guess what amazing stuff I got today? Zaya excited voice cracked as it came from the holographic screen. Sulei asked curiously, what good stuff is it? Tell me quickly. That godfather of anime finally agreed to share his treasured collection with me. Zaya voice couldn't hide her excitement. You know, he's a super mysterious person. These treasures are his most prized possessions. Sulei turned over, placed the watch on the pillow, then sat up straight, facing Zaya, who was being projected into a hologram, and listened with great interest as she spoke. Is it that online friend of yours who's always spending all his time in the dispatch dungeons? Sulei asked playfully. Yes, yes, yes. Zaya voice was filled with undisguised pride. He really went all out this time. He didn't even finish his mission just to copy these treasures. Just then, the holographic projection suddenly flickered and then split into 2 screens, with 3 data packets popping up on one of them. They are labeled as Himauto, Yumaru-chan, Iro Manga-sensei, and Yasuga no Sora. Sulei's gaze fell on the 3 titles and a sense of curiosity welled up in her heart. She hesitated for a moment but ultimately decided to open Himauto, Yumaru-chan, and take a look. When she pressed play, a cute little girl appeared on the screen. Her name was Yumaru. Yumaru has long brown hair and big eyes and looks very cute. As the story unfolds, Yumaru suddenly transforms into a chibi-style form, resembling a chubby little hamster. Sulei and Zaya exclaimed simultaneously, "Wow, this is so cute." If Baiye could see Sulei's expression at this moment, his heart would be filled with complex emotions, because her personality at this moment was completely opposite to that she displayed in front of him. Zaya-okian's smug laughter came from the other end of the holographic projection. How about that? I told you you'd like it. That big shot said these are the most popular anime from the old society, and he might be the only one on the entire planet Tianlin who has the complete versions. Zyokian shook her head smugly and continued enthusiastically. There's something even more amazing. Then she skillfully switched to another work, Iro Manga Sensei. As the screen unfolded, Zyaokian pointed to the characters and introduced them to Sule. Look at this little sister, she's a homebody just like you. When the scene showed Sajiri blushing as she opened the door for her brother, a familiar scene suddenly flashed through Sule's mind. She remembered the old days when she would wake up every morning to find Baiye quietly preparing breakfast for her. Back then, Baiye was just like Zyaokian is now, a light that illuminated the endless gloom in her heart. Here comes the important part, tilde. Zyaokian suddenly interrupted Sule's recollection, revealing a sly smile. She quickly clicked on episode 11 of Yasuga no Sora. When the scene of the Kasugano siblings embracing in the entryway appeared on the screen, Sule's face instantly turned red. As if she had been burned, she slammed the projector off. Her ear tips instantly became scalding hot as if they could bleed. Zyaokian, Sule shouted angrily, grabbing the pillow beside her and throwing it hard at Zyaokian's illusory figure. However, the pillow only bounced slightly before falling to the ground. Just then, Zyaokian's giggles came from inside, her laughter clearly carrying a hint of teasing and mockery. Shy, Zyaokian's voice came through the communicator, clearly teasing. Speaking of which, didn't your brother buy you a new bow today? Sule's mood calmed down a bit. She smiled and hummed in agreement, then glanced casually at the ice sole short bow placed beside the bed. Moonlight filtered through the gaps in the curtains, casting a soft blue glow on the bow, making it appear even more mysterious and captivating. She suddenly remembered Baiye's nonchalant attitude when he handed her the short bow earlier that day, and his casual remark, "You'll have to replace it sooner or later anyway." "What's wrong? Why did you suddenly stop talking?" Zyaokian's voice brought her back to reality. "It's nothing," Sule replied hesitantly, unsure how to explain her complicated feelings to Zyaokian. "It's the short bow my brother bought me today. It's a premium model." "Wow," Zyaokian exclaimed from the other end of the communicator, clearly very surprised by the news. "That guy who always has a stern face is actually so generous." Sule gently stroked the bowstring, feeling its smoothness and resilience as if she could touch Baiye's dedication. And he bought 5 bottles of every type of medicine the school required," Sule continued. The other end of the communicator suddenly fell silent, with only the faint sound of breathing echoing in the air. After a long while, Zyaokian said softly, "Actually, you could try talking to him." Sule buried her face deeper into the pillow, seemingly trying to avoid the suggestion. She didn't know how to face Baiye, nor what to say to him. Of course, she knew that ever since she met Zyaokian in her first year of high school, this lively girl had been like a ray of light shining into her closed-off world. Zyaokian's appearance brought a touch of color to her originally gloomy life, and also made her gradually begin to try to step out of her closed-off heart. During this time, she tried more than once to take the initiative to repair her relationship with Baiye. But the silence she had cultivated over 3 years was like an invisible wall, standing between her and Baiye. She could clearly see Baiye on the other side of the wall, yet she was unable to cross this seemingly non-existent, yet incredibly solid barrier. Finally, after struggling internally for a long time, she mustered her courage and muttered softly, "I don't know what to say." As she spoke, her fingers unconsciously twirled around the ends of her hair, revealing her inner tension and unease. After chatting with Zyaokian for a while longer, the holographic projection was quickly turned off, leaving only the soft buzzing of the magic lamp in the room. Sule slowly turned over, her gaze falling on the lamplight on the ceiling. For the past 3 years, every night, Baiye would turn off the living room light at 10 o'clock sharp, and the noise from the next room would always be so quiet as if afraid of disturbing something. She suddenly remembered the price of the short bow, 28 gold coins, which was a significant expense even for their family. Baiye was always like this. Although their relationship was distant, he would always prepare anything she needed over the years. His priest's robe, which he had always worn, was now faded from washing, and he was still using the novice priest's staff, which he had heard was a gift from a classmate when he helped him heal. The family photo on the bedside table gleamed with an old luster under the light. Sule reached out and gently wiped the glass of the photo frame. Her fingertips lingered for a moment on the image of Baiye from her childhood before quickly withdrawing them. "Good night," she said to the empty room, as if saying goodbye to someone. Moonlight slipped through the gap in the curtains, casting a silvery blue streak on the ice sole short bow. In the early morning, as the sun rose, sunlight filtered through the kitchen's sheer curtains, scattering like shattered gold across the dining table, creating dappled patterns of light and shadow. Baiye gently pushed open the door, and the moment he stepped into the kitchen, he suddenly froze in place as if he had been frozen in place. On the oak dining table sat a plate of perfectly toasted bread. The toast had an enticing golden brown surface with caramel-colored crisp edges, and next to it, a glass of milk was steaming gently. This was the first time in 3 years that he had witnessed such a scene. "Brother," a weak voice came from behind him. Baiye slowly turned around and saw Su Lei standing at the corner of the stairs, her hands tightly gripping the hem of her school uniform skirt, seemingly a little nervous. The morning light shone on her, gilding her blue and white sideburns with a faint golden edge, making her look like an elf emerging from the dawn. Her gaze darted away, a fleeting glance at Baiye's face before she quickly lowered her eyes and said softly, "Just something I casually grilled." Baiye keenly noticed her small movement, and also saw the band-aid on her left index finger, with some jam stuck to the edge of the band-aid. Baiye didn't speak but cast a healing spell on her hand, then silently pulled out a chair and sat down. Then he picked up a slice of toast and took a small bite. The crunching sound of the toast being bitten was particularly clear in the quiet restaurant. The perfect sweetness of honey slowly melted on Baiye's tongue, surprising him. His control over the heat was far more precise than when he baked toast himself before. "Is it good?" Su Li's voice was so soft it was almost a whisper, so soft that Baiye barely heard it. But since it was the first time the other person had made him breakfast, and it was indeed delicious, he gave an affirmative answer. Relieved to receive the praise, Su Li glanced at Baiye and a scene from the anime Yasuga no Sora that she had secretly watched after hanging up with Zio Kyan the night before suddenly flashed through her mind. Her ear tips immediately turned bright red, as if they had been roasted. Just then she noticed the obvious dark circles under Baiye's eyes, as if he hadn't slept well all night. Didn't you sleep well last night?" Baiye paused slightly, then silently swallowed the last bite of toast and replied, "MMM." His voice was somewhat low, and he did sound rather tired. In fact, last night's white night was not simply due to not sleeping well. Last night, he not only expended a great deal of mental energy to deduce various kinds of knowledge, especially after successfully unlocking part of the Dark Moon Library's bookshelves, but he was also completely captivated by the new knowledge of this world, so much so that he unknowingly spent the entire night there. Even a genius like Baiye, whose mental strength far surpasses that of other players of the same level, is finding it difficult to cope with such intense mental exertion. However, more than his physical exhaustion, what concerned Baiye was that this was the first time in 3 years that Su Li had shown such concern for his condition. Just as he was pondering, a glass of milk was gently pushed in front of him. The condensation from the hot milk as it came into contact with the air caused droplets to slide down the side of the cup, leaving tiny circular marks on the tablecloth. Baiye slowly raised his head, his gaze meeting Su Li's. However, the moment he looked at Su Li, she seemed to suddenly realize something and hurriedly turned her head away, not daring to meet his eyes. Bathed in the morning sunlight, Baiye could clearly see Su Li's eyelashes trembling slightly like butterfly wings, revealing a hint of unease in her heart. "Your face is very red." He suddenly reached out, the cuff of his priest's robe brushing against the table. "Do you have a fever?" No, Su Li leaned back abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. The image of Sajiri's flushed face from last night overlapped with the image of those slender fingers before her eyes, and she almost jumped up, grabbing her school bag. "I'm going to school." Baiye's hand hovered in midair as he watched Su Li's retreating figure, which seemed to be fleeing in panic. From the entrance came the sound of hurriedly tying shoelaces. As the door slammed shut, he noticed a smile that had crept onto his lips without him realizing it. After Su Li left, Baiye stretched and continued to deduce his own priest skills in addition to alchemy knowledge and skills. "What, sleeping? No way, bro. He has a meditation skill that can quickly restore his mental energy, so what kind of sleep does he need?" Skill, basic meditation. Order 0. Proficiency, intermediate 99%. Skill cost, none. Skill cast time, none. Skill cooldown, none. Basic skill effect, restores 1 point of spirit every 10 seconds. Skill growth coefficient, recovery efficiency plus 10%. With Baiye's current intermediate level of proficiency, 99%, his current recovery efficiency through meditation is approximately 1 point of mental energy every 5 seconds. If he meditates with all his might, he can probably replenish his mental energy in less than an hour. Once Baiye had fully recovered, he immediately began to deduce the other priest knowledge-based skills. After all, the foundation determines the superstructure. As long as the foundation is solid, he can achieve twice the result with half the effort when deduce priest skills. Soon, the whole day passed. During this day, Baiye did almost nothing except deduce basic knowledge and meditate to recover. However, his basic meditation technique resonated with the meditation techniques used in cultivation, and through this analogy, he made a significant breakthrough. Ding, congratulations to player Moonlit Sky for successfully comprehending the profound meaning of meditation. Basic meditation has been upgraded to beginner meditation, tier 1, and 3 potential points have been gained. Skill, basic meditation. Rank first rank. Proficiency intermediate 99%. Skill cost none. Skill cast time none. Skill cooldown none. Basic skill effect restores 1.5 points of spirit every 10 seconds. Skill growth coefficient. Recovery efficiency plus 12%. Although the basic mental recovery efficiency only increases by about 50%, and the growth coefficient is only 12% after advancing in meditation, the time saved is enough for Baiye to do many things. Moreover, according to the game system's description, the effects of the basic meditation technique are actually far more than these. It's just that Baiye's current rank is too low to unlock all the effects yet. If he were to reach the first rank now and condense a magic core belonging to the mage system at the center of his brow, then during meditation, in addition to restoring his mental energy, he could also restore his mana. However, Baiye didn't have much intention of advancing to the next level right now, because as a priest, his strength, constitution, and agility attributes were all too low. He absolutely must raise these 3 attributes to the upper limit of 25 points at the 0 level, or break through the limit before breaking through again. This will definitely be of great benefit to his future cultivation. He had some minor insights into body refinement in the cultivation world. Whether it was the blood and chi nourishment method of martial arts or the medicinal bath enhancement method, he could try them all in this infinite flow world. Unfortunately, both methods require too many resources, and the improvement speed is not significant enough. For Baiye, what he wanted was to improve his physical body to a satisfactory level within a month, and then advance to the next level. Coincidentally, back in the world of cultivation, he had created a secret technique that could rapidly enhance physical strength. This secret method requires neither spiritual power nor rare and precious materials, and it doesn't even require the so-called heavenly lightning tempering or heavenly fire burning. As long as he continuously strengthens his body through sword intent, he can enhance himself indefinitely. Do you remember the concept of sword intent? Skill, sword intent. Rank, first order, third order can be freely controlled. Proficiency advanced. Skill cost 1 to 100 spirit points per second. Skill cast time none. Skill cooldown none. Skill effect 1 sharpness active. Skill effect 2 entanglement active. Skill effect 3 enhancement active for any weapon that the user identifies as a sword. The user can nurture it with sword intent, gradually increasing its strength. It can also temporarily increase the sword's strength by 100% of its spirit power. Skill growth coefficient 10%, 32%. Note, if the weapon's durability is less than the player's own spirit value, 1 to 30 durability points will be consumed per second. That's right. The third effect of the sword intent is that Baiye can strengthen himself by identifying himself as a sword and using the sword intent to nurture himself. However, in this case, his health points will be considered as the sword's durability, and if his health points are below his spirit level, he will lose at least 1 health point per second. Back in his days in the cultivation world, he often used this method to improve his physical strength. However, his cultivation level had already improved back then, and his life force was definitely much higher than it is now. Even under those circumstances, he still had to keep healing medicine on hand in case of emergency. Fortunately, I'm a priest now. Although my health is low, I can recover by casting healing spells on myself. As long as you don't do anything reckless, just keep your health below 50%. The effects of this high-intensity body tempering far surpass those of his time in the cultivation world, because back then, when his cultivation level was low, he didn't have sword intent or saber intent to protect him. However, for Baiye, this matter takes a backseat to figuring out other skills. After all, sharpening your axe won't delay your work. As long as you improve your proficiency in healing spells, you can also increase your efficiency in tempering your body through sword intent. So over the next few days, through continuous deduction, Baiye finally managed to break through the proficiency level of all knowledge-based skills and professional skills to the advanced level of 99%. Of course, first-tier skills lacking the support of advanced knowledge become somewhat unsustainable after breaking through to higher levels. Of course, this is not to blame Dao Ling Shengzin for being ineffective. The main reason is that his current realm is too low, and he knows too little about advancement knowledge, so his elder brother was unable to help him take off directly. However, what concerned Baiye even more was that he noticed Su Li's attitude towards him seemed to have improved significantly in the past few days. Could it be because I gave her that exquisite short bow? So this cheap little sister is just a character in the game whose affection level can be increased by giving gifts. I've given her quite a few things before, so why hasn't my favorability rating increased? Is it because the gifts we sent before were of too low quality, and only premium grade or higher items are useful? Thinking of this, Baiye couldn't help but chuckle at his own strange idea. However, no matter what, it was a good thing that Su Li's attitude towards him had improved, and he was happy to accept it. The seventh day after the awakening of White Knight's memories, Sunday. The gentle morning sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating Baiye's sharply defined yet scholarly face. He slowly opened his eyes like a sleeping lion awakened by the sunlight, stretched out a long yawn, and his joints made a relaxing, crackling sound. Perhaps it was the intense mental exertion of the past few days that caused his body to protest. Or perhaps it was his subconscious desire to find a chance to relax his tense nerves. Last night, unusually, Baiye didn't devote all her time to skill simulations or reading alchemical knowledge as usual, but went to bed early. The first thing Baiye did upon waking was to instinctively reach for the headboard and pull out a slightly worn notebook from among layers of clothes. This is a record of his insights into deduction skills over this period of time. Each page is densely filled with various complex symbols, formulas, and flashes of inspiration that suddenly occurred to him during the deduction process. He plans to reflect on his insights gained over the past few days to see if he can find an opportunity to further improve his skills. However, before he could take any action, a sudden knock on the door shattered the tranquility of the room. Baiye frowned slightly, put down his notebook, straightened his slightly disheveled clothes, and then opened the door. The moment the door opened, Su Li appeared in the doorway. She lowered her head slightly, her hands unconsciously gripping the hem of her skirt, her fingers squeezing so tightly that the hem was wrinkled. Sunlight fell on her profile, outlining her soft features, but also revealing her current unease. Brother, Su Li's voice was tinged with nervousness, sounding somewhat timid, as if each word was uttered with all her might. I want to tell you. Take your time, don't rush, speak slowly. Baiye couldn't quite articulate any special feelings for this younger sister, but at this moment she tried her best to keep her tone calm, allowing the other woman to compose herself. Su Li took a deep breath, as if she had made a great decision, and mustered her courage to say, "The school is organizing a dungeon raid tomorrow. I want to go to the virtual battle room in the functional area before then, to improve my combat skills, and also to familiarize myself with the new bow." As she spoke, Su Li's voice grew softer and softer, and she gradually looked away, unable to meet Baiye's gaze. For Su Li, who used to have autism, when facing herself, she would usually either remain silent or speak in a tone as cold as ice. This was the first time Baiye had ever seen someone speak with such a hint of shyness and unease as she did today. He looked at Su Li's nervous expression, a slight smile playing on his lips, but he didn't interrupt her. Only after Su Li finished speaking did she gently nod and say, "Okay, I'll go with you." When Baiye knew about Su Li's current situation. Although her autism had improved significantly after Xiao Qian's guidance, she was still not used to communicating with anyone other than Xiao Qian and herself. He would accompany her on these outings even if she didn't ask. It just so happens that my skill progression has recently hit a bottleneck. Perhaps, besides using Dao Spirit Sacred Heart to force a breakthrough, I could also try reading some advanced knowledge. Right next to the virtual battle room is the Xinghua bookstore, officially opened by the Xinglong Kingdom. Hearing Baiye's reply, Su Li breathed a sigh of relief. She gently bit her lip and said, 15 minutes later maybe. If I go too late, I might have to wait in line. I want to go early and come back early. Baiye nodded slightly, turned and walked towards the washroom, quickly washing up and finishing her personal hygiene within 15 minutes. After getting dressed, Baiye walked to Su Li's side again, and the two walked out of the house together. Along the way, they first stopped at a breakfast stall on the street and bought steaming hot buns and soy milk. Then we boarded the magic bus to the functional area, watching the scenery outside the window rush past. Soon, the functional areas came into view. Unlike traditional commercial districts, the Tianlangxing gaming area resembles a vast, dreamlike city where technology and magic blend seamlessly. The buildings are arranged in a neat and orderly fashion, each radiating a unique magical energy, the result of the interaction between magical devices and high-tech equipment. Tall metal structures weave between buildings, like the veins of the area, constantly transmitting energy. On the streets, all sorts of strange vehicles shuttled back and forth. Some resembled birds flapping their glowing wings, while others looked like floating cars with blue energy patterns shimmering on their bottoms. When they arrived at the area where the virtual battle room was located, the building before them was even more magnificent. The building's exterior resembles a giant crystal, refracting a dazzling array of colors, sometimes shimmering as if it were breathing. Entering the virtual battle room, Baiye and Su Li felt as if they had stepped into a completely new world. This place is a wonderland where high-tech equipment and magical elements are perfectly integrated. Huge magical scrolls hung on the walls, their magical runes constantly dancing and emitting a soft light that illuminated the entire room. In the center of the battle room are several huge holographic game pods. These gaming pods resemble the cockpit of a spaceship, and their bodies are made of high-strength magic crystal radiating a mysterious light. The seats inside the cabin are made of advanced smart materials and can automatically adjust their shape according to the player's body shape to ensure that the player is in the most comfortable state during the game. At the top of the gaming pod, there is a huge magical sphere of light, within which countless data streams constantly flow. These data streams are the link connecting the virtual world and the real world. All of a player's actions and feelings in the game are transmitted to the real world in real time through these data streams. Similarly, their attributes, abilities, and other data can also be uploaded to the virtual world. They can even insert their main equipment into the equipment slots for analysis, and the equipment's capabilities can be almost perfectly replicated one-to-one. A notice board in the corner clearly displays the pricing for the virtual battle room. The holographic game pods in the lobby cost 10 silver coins per hour, while the private virtual battle rooms cost 60 silver coins per hour. In terms of effectiveness, the holographic game pod simply uploads all consciousness and perception to a virtual space. Although it can also upload data on equipment and props for simulation, the training effect is far inferior to that of a virtual battle room. However, their family wasn't wealthy, so they always opted for the main hall. But today, Baiye unusually booked a private room for Su Li, which puzzled the latter greatly. "Brother," Su Li tugged at his sleeve with her small hand and said hesitantly, "this costs 60 silver coins." Baiye hummed an agreement and smiled, "It's all right. Indulging once in a while is a good opportunity for me to see just how strong you are." The virtual battle room was much more spacious than Baiye had imagined. On the walls of the room, pale blue magical light flowed slowly like water, forming a circular space with a diameter of about 10 meters. These magical light curtains seemed to be alive, constantly changing shape and color, giving people a dreamlike feeling. In the center of the room, on the floor, was an intricate and beautifully engraved magic circle. This magic circle is made up of countless interwoven lines and symbols, and looks very mysterious. At the center of the formation, a crystal ball the size of a fist floats, emitting a soft light like a dazzling pearl in the night sky. Baiye looked around, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. He explained, "The magic array here can 100% simulate the tactile sensations, pain, and fatigue of combat. It has an internal spatial matrix. It doesn't look very big, making it a bit cramped, but the actual battleground can reach a radius of 100 meters and—" As he spoke, he pointed to the control panel on the wall. "You can also invite a teammate to watch the game here." After hearing Baiye's words, Su Li carefully extended her finger and gently touched the crystal ball. The moment her finger touched the crystal ball, rows of holographic options suddenly appeared before her eyes. The labels on them read Battle Mode, Training Mode, Extreme Challenge, etc. System prompt, please select Training Mode. Su Li hesitated for a moment, then ultimately chose Single-Person Basic Training. Baiye noticed that she had chosen the most basic level 13 Orc Warrior, which was the standard configuration for the school's assessment and the most suitable monster unit for student training. As the light screen flickered, a green-skinned orc nearly 2 meters tall appeared in the center of the arena, its rough skin covered with scars from battle. The moment the battle began, Su Li was visibly nervous, her breathing becoming erratic. Her first arrow missed, grazing the orc's shoulder. The orc roared and charged at her, brandishing his bone axe. Baiye stood quietly in the observation area, watching Su Li skillfully dodge and counterattack. Her movements were very standard but too textbook-like. She had to deliberately adjust to the perfect posture before daring to fire each time. 2 minutes and 30 seconds later, Su Li finally found an opportunity and shot the orc through the throat with an ice soul arrow. She stood there panting, her forehead damp with sweat. Battle ended, 2 minutes and 32 seconds. Effective attack rate 58%. Note, an effective attack does not necessarily mean a direct hit. An attack that has some impact on the battle is also considered effective. Loss of health 13%. Just then, Baiye walked into the battle area at a leisurely pace. Su Li stood there, her body stiff, and lowered her head, somewhat afraid to look at him. Just as Su Li was feeling uneasy, Baiye suddenly frowned and said, the bowstring is drawn too taut. Su Li suddenly raised her head, looking at Baiye with a face full of astonishment, because this was the first time in the past 3 years that her brother had guided her in combat. Baiye walked to Su Li's side, took her bow, and patiently explained while demonstrating the proper bow-holding posture. Constantly pulling it to its limit will actually slow down your shooting speed. It's important to know that among all the classes in Eternal Sanctuary, Su Li's Hunter class is a top-tier T0 class in the early game. Not only is it capable of long-range attacks, but it is also quite good at close combat. In addition, it possesses a variety of keen intuitions and pursuit abilities, making it a true all-rounder. With this level of skill, it took Su Li 2.5 minutes to kill a single orc warrior mob, which is simply unacceptable. Su Li's ear tips turned slightly red, and she looked at Baiye somewhat shyly. Baiye continued, when orcs charge, they'll have a 0.5-second forward lean due to inertia. During this time, perfect form isn't important, rapid firing is more crucial. Su Li nodded seriously, her gaze fixed on Baiye's hands. She saw that while he was drawing his bow and nocking an arrow, his right hand, which was holding the arrow, also held 2 additional arrows. After the first arrow was fired, the second arrow was quickly nocked, and the 3 arrows were fired in quick succession in less than 2 seconds. Try again. After saying that, Baiye returned her hunter's shortbow and retreated to the observation area, her eyes revealing a hint of encouragement. Don't necessarily aim for the head, heart, or neck this time. If necessary, hitting their arms, shoulders, or legs is also a good option. When the second battle began, Su Li's movements were noticeably smoother. She began to try the imperfect shooting that Baiye had mentioned, imitating Baiye's actions, taking 3 arrows at once and quickly firing them 3 times as the orcs charged. Although the damage from the last 2 arrows was greatly reduced, they still successfully interrupted the orcs' offensive. 56 seconds later, the orc collapsed to the ground. Battle ended 56 seconds. Effective attack rates 72%. Missing health 0%. Su Li looked at the data, her eyes lighting up. She secretly glanced at Baiye in the observation area and noticed that her brother was nodding slightly, with a barely perceptible smile on his lips. Change your opponent. Baiye's slender fingers slid rapidly across the control panel. This one is more suitable for training your dodging skills. Level 13 Werewolf Scout Elite. Features: Swift, accurate, rapid fire. Su Li unconsciously swallowed. Elite level. You should know that at the same level, elite level units can fight on par with elite players. Furthermore, the Werewolf Scout is clearly a hunter, belonging to the top-tier T0 class. Is it really possible for me to defeat him? In the center of the arena, a lean werewolf gradually took shape, with a quiver hanging from its waist and a rough but sharp short bow in its hand. Unlike other werewolves, its fur is grayish-blue, and its eyes reflect a dangerous yellowish-green light in the dim light. The Werewolf Scout displayed astonishing agility the moment the battle began. Instead of charging immediately, it quickly retreated to create distance while simultaneously nocking an arrow. Watch your positioning. Baiye's voice had barely rang out when the first arrow grazed Su Li's cheek. Su Li hurriedly rolled to the side, but the Werewolf Scout seemed to have anticipated her movements, and a second arrow had already blocked her escape route. The arrow pierced her left shoulder, and the virtual pain sent a shiver down her arm. Don't move in a predictable pattern. Baiye's voice remained calm. Observe its bow-drawing rhythm, predict its shooting trajectory, and change direction the instant it releases the arrow. On the third shot, Su Li finally seized the opportunity. She suddenly turned back the moment the werewolf loosened its grip, and the arrow only grazed the hem of her clothes. Su Li tried to retaliate with her skill, but the wind-up animation was too obvious, and the shot only grazed the werewolf's arm. At the same time, the enemy also fired an arrow in that very short time, hitting her thigh. It hurts. Su Li gasped softly, looking at the virtual arrow stuck in her thigh. The Werewolf Scout's tactics were clearly far more sophisticated than hers. He always used cover for guerrilla warfare, and in less than a minute, he shot her in the head with an arrow while she was restricted in her movements. Battle over. You have been defeated by the Werewolf Scout LV-13 Elite Unit. Effective attack rate 12%. Loss of health 100%. Being easily defeated by an elite monster of the same level left Su Li feeling somewhat down, because if it weren't for her hunter class and her ability to use a tracking arrow, the monster might have been able to kill her without taking any damage. Baiye let her rest for a while and then gave her some pre-battle analysis. You dare to charge up your skill during a ranged duel. Do you think the enemy won't dodge when they see your movement? After she had rested enough, he growled again. Su Li took a deep breath and readjusted her bow grip. Second challenge, Werewolf Scout LV-13 Elite. As the crystal ball flickered, the gray-blue werewolf scout reappeared in the center of the training field. This time she remembered Baiye's reminder and immediately rolled to the left at the start. The werewolf's first arrow indeed struck the spot where she had been standing. But as she tried to retaliate, the werewolf nimbly leaped onto the abandoned wooden crate and fired 3 arrows from above. "Take cover," Baiye's voice pierced through the virtual battlefield's barrier. Su Li hurriedly hid behind a stone pillar, but the werewolf cunningly circled around to the side and shot her in the right shoulder with an arrow. The virtual pain sensation caused her arm to instantly lose sensation, and the short bow almost slipped from her grasp. 1 minute later, battle over, you have been defeated by the Werewolf Scout LV-13 Elite Unit. Effective attacks 17%. Loss of health 100%. Baiye entered the arena and gently lifted her trembling right hand. What's the most important thing in a ranged duel? Su Li bit her lip. Accuracy. Baiye shook his head. Is that an evasion ability? He shook his head again, no longer keeping them in suspense. It's all about the view. As he spoke, Baiye pointed to the high ground at the edge of the arena. What you should be doing at the start is taking that spot, not rushing to attack. Once you force them into cover, you'll have time to charge up your skills. The third challenge. Having learned her lesson, Su Li immediately rushed towards the high platform on the right at the start of the game. This successfully disrupted the werewolf's rhythm, forcing it to change its usual tactics. But when she gained the upper hand, she made a fatal mistake. She pressed too far. The werewolf feigned retreat to lure her away from the platform, then suddenly turned around and shot an arrow through her calf. It deliberately created an opening. Baiye looked at Su Li, who was kneeling on the ground. The werewolf scout will learn your fighting habits. 30 seconds later, battle over, you have been defeated by. Effective attack rate 43%. Loss of health 100%. Fourth challenge. This time, Su Li learned to keep her distance. After seizing the high ground, she successfully forced the werewolf into cover, used a charged frost arrow to compress its living space, and used the edge of the field to lower the opponent's health. Just when victory seemed within reach, the werewolf suddenly sprang into action, firing an arrow at an incredible angle. We let our guard down at the last moment, Baiye pointed out. Elite monsters will launch a last-ditch counterattack when their health drops to a certain level. Battle over, you have been defeated. Effective attack rate 62%. Loss of health 100%. Su Li's eyes reddened, and her right hand, gripping the short bow, clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She almost couldn't help but shut up again. Fifth challenge. After the first 4 failures, Su Li's gaze became unusually focused. She stopped mechanically following textbook tactics and began to observe the werewolf's behavioral patterns. When the werewolf feigned retreat again, she didn't rush to pursue, but instead anticipated its counterattack. After dodging to the side, she seized the opportunity when the werewolf was retracting his bow, unleashing a powerful frost arrow followed by 2 regular shots, forming a triangular formation to block all escape routes. Although the werewolf scout dodged 2 arrows, he was unfortunately hit in the thigh. With his movements restricted, his living space began to be continuously eroded by Su Li. As the last homing arrow struck the werewolf's throat with deadly precision, an exhilarating notification sound echoed throughout the training ground. Su Li slumped to the ground, her chest heaving violently, her fingers trembling slightly from gripping the bowstring for so long. Virtual sunlight streamed through the dome of the training ground, illuminating the gradually dissipating corpse of the werewolf scout until it appeared translucent. Don't get too excited. Baiye turned off the holographic data panel, his voice as calm as if discussing the weather. This time you've only familiarized yourself with this werewolf scout's fighting style. It doesn't mean your current strength is actually enough to defeat an elite monster of the same level. He bent down to pick up the quiver Su Li had dropped, his fingertips lightly tracing the fletching of the arrows. If it were a scout with a different fighting style, you might not be able to defeat it again. Su Li opened her mouth to refute, but found that her brother was right. In the end, they were able to win because they remembered the werewolf's habits of each feint, plus Baiye's guidance. She looked down at her still trembling fingertips and suddenly realized how big the gap was between real-world practice and textbooks. Seemingly noticing her low spirits, Baiye comforted her, "Don't be discouraged. After this training, as long as you remember the process of improving your combat skills and continue to refine them in the upcoming dungeons, your combat power will definitely increase significantly." Su Li gave a soft but then asked with some confusion, "Brother, your combat coaching abilities, and how do you know how to shoot arrows?" Baiye's expression remained unchanged as he calmly smiled and said, "I learned it by watching videos online. You'll get it after watching enough times. Is it really that difficult? Su Li was momentarily speechless at his words. Although they sounded somewhat Versailles-like, she knew he wasn't exaggerating. After all, from childhood to adulthood, her nominal older brother had been a genius in every sense of the word. He seemed to learn everything very quickly, which led his parents to praise him frequently. As a result, Su Li felt that he had stolen her affection and their relationship had always been strained. But if Baiye's shooting talent is so strong, capable of acquiring archery skills even better than mine just by watching videos, why didn't he choose the archer class back then, but instead chose the priest class? If he had chosen archery like I did, perhaps he wouldn't have missed out on the professional program and failed the college entrance exam as a result. After that, Baiye selected various opponents for her, such as warriors, mages, shield guards, and assassins, all of whom were elite units. He provided professional analysis of each profession and advised them on how to deal with their adversaries. Su Li's talent was not bad either, and she quickly absorbed Baiye's teaching experience and carried out practical training. On one occasion, she even managed to kill an elite mage in her very first battle. Just after the two finished their training, the results screen in the virtual battle room popped up. Usage time, 1 hour 56 minutes. Cost, 120 silver coins, 60 silver coins hour for a single room. Seeing the exorbitant training fees, Su Li's attention was diverted, her pupils suddenly contracted, and she felt a pang of heartache. It was more than half a month's allowance. But Baiye had already swiped open the payment interface without even frowning. Brother, she began softly, seemingly blaming herself for spending so much money, but swallowed her words when she saw Baiye's calm profile. Sunlight streamed through the glass dome of the commercial district, casting a pale golden hue on his fair skin. The cuffs of his priest's robe swayed gently in the breeze, revealing the faded lining beneath. After turning two corners, Su Li suddenly stopped, looking at the red brick building covered in ivy in front of her. The four gilded characters of Xinghua Bookstore gleamed in the sunlight. An old wooden sign stands at the entrance, with the words Former Xinhua Bookstore written on it in faded paint. This stay-toned bookstore, transformed from the old Xinhua Bookstore, still retains the brick-red reliefs from the last century on its exterior walls, except for a rotating magic crystal ball above the door. As Baiye passed by the maroon sign of Xinghua Bookstore, he suddenly stopped. His gaze fell on the stone bench at the bookstore entrance, then he turned to Su Li and said, "Wait here for me." Seeing this, Su Li wanted to follow him into the bookstore, but Baiye seemed to have guessed her thoughts and added as he turned around, "There are too many people inside." Although the reason was simple, it immediately made Su Li give up the idea of following them in. After all, for her, the unfamiliar environment with many people remains a weakness that is difficult to overcome. As Baiye's figure disappeared behind the bookstore door, a clear, crisp sound of a copper bell rang out. Through the bookstore window, Su Li saw Baiye moving around the bookstore. Unlike most people, he didn't go to the book reservation area first, but went straight to the information desk. "I need a general advanced textbook for the mage system," Baiye's voice rang out from the bookstore's information desk. "Preferably one that can be used across different schools of magic." Upon hearing Baiye's request, the female shop assistant wearing round glasses lit up, clearly very familiar with his needs. She smiled and replied, "You've come at just the right time. We just restocked a batch of these teaching materials today." She bent down and pulled out a stack of books with gold-embossed edges from under the counter. The books looked heavy and had a faint scent of ink. "This is the 9 Chapters of Elements series, the most commonly used magic book in our store and also in most vocational academies." As she spoke, she carefully placed the stack of books on the counter, then gently patted the covers, as if these books were her treasures. However, when she looked up at Baiye, she suddenly lowered her voice, seemingly a little embarrassed, and said, "But the complete set of 9 books will cost 30 gold coins." Baiye's gaze fell on the stack of books. His slender fingers slowly traced the spines of the books, finally settling on a book titled Advanced Elemental Resonance. "How many schools of thought are applicable to the core formulas in this book?" His voice was deep and gentle, making people feel comfortable. The shop assistant immediately and enthusiastically opened the catalog, pointing to a page and saying, 7. And if you use them together with advanced elemental equations, the effect will be even better. Many novice mages like this combination. After saying that, she quickly pulled 3 more books from the bookshelf and placed them in front of Baiye. "Add this architectural trilogy, and you'll have a complete system for manipulating elements." Baiye didn't respond immediately. He simply flipped through the sample books quickly, occasionally pausing for a few seconds on a particular page to carefully read its contents. Standing outside, Su Li silently observed Baiye's actions. She noticed that Baiye eventually pushed 6 of the books to the counter, while putting the remaining 3, which were obviously thicker, back in their original place. 18 gold coins. The shop assistant deftly packed the book Baiye had chosen, then smiled and asked, "Would you like an invoice?" "No need," Baiye's voice was very soft. He deliberately blocked Su Li's view with his body and took out 18 gold coins from the game's money box and handed them over. When Baiye pushed the door open and came out, Su Li immediately stood up straight. His hands were empty, he had obviously thrown everything into his backpack. But she didn't ask any further questions, instead she tugged at Baiye's sleeve. "Brother, let's go back." As the sun rose high in the sky, the two turned into the convenience market in Wudong Lane. Baiye stopped in the fresh food section, where the magic lights hanging on the stalls made the scales of the sea bass shimmer silver. "Give me a sea bass." Baiye stood in front of the fish stall, pointing to the fish kept in the live water tank. The stall owner moved swiftly and skillfully, quickly picking up the net and accurately scooping up the bass that Baiye had specified. Then, he placed the fish on the electronic scale, and the display clearly showed the price as 1.2 jin/84 copper coins. "Does it need to be processed?" Baiye nodded. "Yes, thank you for your help." Immediately afterwards, he handed over a silver coin, and after receiving change, he turned and walked to the vegetable stall next door to begin selecting other ingredients. Green peppers, tofu, tender lotus root segments, shiitake mushrooms. Each ingredient was carefully selected by him to ensure their freshness and quality. The stall owner weighed the vegetables Baiye had selected and quoted their prices. Green peppers 10 copper coins, tofu 10 copper coins, tender lotus root segments 15 copper coins, and shiitake mushrooms 18 copper coins. Finally, when Baiye returned to the fish stall to pick up the fish, he also asked for half a pound of river shrimp. After the stall owner weighed them, he told him the price was 90 copper coins. Su Li stood aside, silently watching Baiye select ingredients. When she calculated that the ingredients alone for this lunch cost 227 copper coins, she couldn't help but gasp. "This is equivalent to the cost of 3 meals at the school cafeteria. I didn't know cooking for yourself would cost so much." After returning home, Baiye went into the kitchen and began preparing lunch. Soon, the rhythmic sound of knife work could be heard from the kitchen. After taking a shower, Su Li walked into the dining room and immediately saw that 3 dishes and a soup were already laid out on the table. The steamed sea bass was drizzled with amber-colored soy sauce, emitting an enticing aroma. The stir-fried shrimp and lotus root slices were tender and pinkish-white, making one's mouth water. The shiitake mushrooms and bok choy were steaming hot, emitting a faint fragrance. And there was also a bowl of tofu soup sprinkled with scallions, which looked incredibly delicious. "Eat more?" Baiye smiled and gently pushed a bowl of glistening rice in front of Su Li, "Wishing you all the best for tomorrow." Baiye paused abruptly, then quickly changed his words. "Anyways, have a good meal." Su Li's chopsticks stopped near the fish gills. This part of the fish has the most tender meat, and she used to always pick it out for her first. The rising steam blurred her vision. In the hazy mist, she suddenly remembered the scene from the anime Himauto. Yumaru-chan she watched last night, where the older brother made hamburger patties for his younger sister. "Brother," Su Li's voice was even softer than the tofu soup. She picked out a piece of fish and placed it in Baiye's bowl. "You eat too." Baiye smiled slightly. "Okay." This home seems to be gradually becoming more cozy and welcoming. After the meal, Su Li took the initiative to get up and clear the dishes. She carefully put the leftovers into the preservation barrier. As she stood on tiptoe, she heard the sound of running water coming from the bathroom. Back in her room, Su Li sat by the window, placed the ice sole short bow on her lap, and carefully wiped it clean. Sunlight filtered through the gauze curtains, casting flowing patterns on the bow and making the short bow appear exceptionally beautiful in the golden glow. The hunter's keen hearing detected the rustling sound of pages turning next door, a sound as steady as a heartbeat. She buried herself in the blanket, suddenly feeling a little reluctant to be separated from her brother for too long. The morning sunlight streamed into the room through the sheer curtains. Baiye straightened up from his desk, his spine making a soft crackling sound. He rubbed his aching temples. The 6 magic books that had been lying open on the table were all closed, with faint glows still remaining on the edges of the pages from when they were turned. "Ding, you have learned Advanced Elemental Resonance and acquired the knowledge skill Advanced Elemental Resonance. Current proficiency, Beginner. Ding, you have learned Advanced Equations of Elements. Your knowledge skill Basic Equations of Elements has been changed to Advanced Equations of Elements, and your proficiency has slightly decreased." As the 6 new knowledge-based skills were neatly arranged in the skill bar, Baiye stretched his stiff fingers. The intense reading that night had nearly depleted his mental energy. He closed his eyes and practiced the basic meditation technique, feeling his depleted mental energy, like a beach after the tide has receded, being slowly replenished by the rising seawater. About 20 minutes later, when his mental strength had recovered to over 80%, a faint fragrance wafted in through the crack in the door. In the kitchen, Su Li was stirring the noodles boiling in the pot with chopsticks. Yesterday afternoon, Baiye was so engrossed in reading that he missed cooking time, so he and Su Li ate out. So the half-eaten sea bass left over from yesterday's lunch has now been shredded into snow-white strips by Su Li, while shiitake mushrooms and tender lotus root slices float and sink in the soup. Upon hearing footsteps, her shoulders visibly tensed for a moment. "Good morning." Baiye leaned against the kitchen doorway, her voice still hoarse from staying up all night. Upon hearing Baiye's voice, Su Li turned her head and softly hummed in response. Then, she continued to serve the cooked noodles into 2 bowls with cartoon designs, which her parents had bought when they were still alive. Su Li hesitated for a moment, then pushed the bowl with more fish to the opposite side of the table. Seeing Su Li's actions, Baiye felt a warmth in his heart, but he didn't say anything. He simply picked up a mouthful of noodles with his chopsticks, and the rising steam blurred his face. "Today, are we going to run a dungeon?" Baiye asked between bites. He knew Su Li didn't have a big appetite, so he ate his noodles without any hesitation. Su Li nodded and replied, "Yes, we'll meet at 8." She lowered her head, gently blew on the soup in the bowl, and then carefully took a sip to avoid burning herself. Her hair fell down, covering her blushing ear tips as if she were a little shy. Bathed in the morning light, the two ate their noodles in silence, the only sound the occasional clinking of their chopsticks against the rim of their bowls. Time ticked by, and when the clock struck 7:20, Su Lei stood up and began packing her school bag. Her ice sole short bow gleamed with a deep blue luster in the morning light, making it particularly eye-catching. "I'm leaving." Su Li's voice was as soft as a feather, as if afraid of breaking the tranquil atmosphere. She stood in the entryway and slowly put on her shoes. Baiye watched her retreating figure, nodded, and then silently watched her leave. Only after Su Li's figure disappeared from the entrance hall did Baiye slowly withdraw his gaze and continue eating the rest of his noodles. Generally speaking, large-scale events organized by schools like this will last for 3 consecutive days. Because that's how the dungeon crystals in Eternal Sanctuary are set up, they can be used 3 times in total, and a single run takes about a whole day. So taking advantage of Su Li's 3-day absence, Baiye went to the commercial street again and bought a large amount of raw materials for first-tier healing, magic, and energy potions, as well as Moonflower Solution, intending to make some potions to supplement the family income. Since moongrass, the main ingredient of moongrass solution, is hard to find on Azure Star, and I happen to have some at Black Manor in the world of Eternal Night. Therefore, Baiye set up the potion mixing site at Black Manor, which is Edmund's laboratory. Because the utensils used in Edmund's laboratory to prepare the moongrass solution were too crude, White Knight had to spend a large sum of money, in addition to the potion ingredients, to purchase alchemical utensils and magical lamps for lighting. After spending so much money over this period, Baiye's current money balance has reached an all-time low, less than 5 gold coins, but he didn't care. As long as he concocted the 4 types of potions and sold them, the money would come back quickly. First, he started with the first type of medicine, which was also the most common and popular treatment available on the market. The main ingredient of the treatment is rotundus juice, and the auxiliary ingredients include silver leaf powder, tamarisk root, blood-clotting flower stamens, and water that is as pure as possible. Baiye gently picked up the container holding the rotisserie juice, his gaze focused and steady. For his first attempt at concoction, Baiye didn't pull any fancy tricks. Instead, he recalled the movements of the pharmacist mixing liquids when he was learning how to make healing potions from the pharmacist. The container was shaken with moderate force, at an angle of approximately 45 degrees, and each shake lasted no more than 5 seconds. This shaking was repeated 10 times. Following this standard strictly, Baiye firmly grasped the container and began to shake it with just the right amount of force. At first, the rotundus juice in the container sloshed gently against the bottle wall, making a soft sound. Baiye stared intently as the juices gradually blended more evenly with each shake, releasing an increasingly rich and fragrant aroma. When shaken for the 10th time, the juice begins to thicken and become clear, with no impurities on the surface, and it emits a rich aroma. Next, it's time to add the auxiliary medicinal materials. Baiye took out the silver leaf powder, the root of Ganliwo grass, and the stamen of the blood-clotting flower in sequence, each portion being exactly the same as when the pharmacist prepared them. He first gently sprinkled the silver leaf powder into the rotundi juice. The powder instantly turned into tiny particles and slowly dispersed in the juice. Subsequently, the roots of the asterisk Gynostema pentaphyllum were ground, and the finely crushed roots were evenly sprinkled in. Finally, under his careful care, the blood-clotting flower stamen completely merged into it. After mixing all the ingredients, Baiye poured them into the firing container and began firing according to the techniques she had learned. He precisely controlled the heat, the flames sometimes fierce, sometimes gentle under his manipulation. He also precisely maintained the firing temperature within a specific range without the slightest deviation. Finally, when a bottle of ordinary Tier 1 life potion appeared on the workbench, Baiye shook his head and began his second preparation. While preparing the second bottle of healing potion, Baiye, drawing on his understanding and insights gained from the production process over the past few days, began to attempt improvements. During the shaking process, he did not limit himself to a fixed pattern, but adjusted the intensity and angle of shaking according to the mixing of the juices. When he noticed that the juices were blending a little slowly in one spot, he gently rotated the angle and applied a little more pressure to make the blending more even and smooth. When adding auxiliary medicinal materials, Baiye no longer mechanically adds them in a fixed order and amount. He discovered that adding a small amount of Gynostema pentaphyllum root first, and then sprinkling in silver leaf powder after it has released some of its active ingredients, allows the medicinal effects to complement each other and blend more perfectly. Moreover, when adding the blood-clotting flower stamen, he deliberately crushed a small amount of the stamen to allow it to release its active ingredients more quickly. In terms of firing, Baiye adjusts the heat and temperature in a timely manner according to the characteristics and fusion stage of various materials. For example, in the initial fusion stage, he uses a relatively gentle heat to allow the materials to adapt and buffer. When it comes to the critical fusion point, he increases the heat to promote a more complete extraction of the medicinal effects. Thanks to these improvements, the second bottle of healing potion was of significantly higher quality upon completion of firing, reaching an excellent grade. Seeing this result, Baiye was still not satisfied because he had made some mistakes in controlling the heat. As expected, the heat control achieved through a magical furnace is ultimately inferior to the spiritual energy-based fire used in alchemy in the cultivation world. When making the third healing potion, he focused more on controlling the heat and was more daring in using his insights to innovate. He introduced a new technique. While shaking the juice, he used his mental power to slightly guide the flow of the juice so that the fusion of the various ingredients could reach a delicate balance. When adding auxiliary medicinal materials, he first microprocesses the silver leaf powder to release a more delicate medicinal effect before mixing it with other medicinal materials. During the firing process, he senses the feedback from the flames and the medicine, adjusting the heat and temperature in real time to ensure the medicine is refined in the optimal state. When the third bottle of healing potion was finished being fired, the bottle emitted a dazzling light, and the entire bottle of potion was like the most brilliant star in the night sky. Baiye picked up the medicine bottle and examined it carefully. He could see that the liquid inside was highly pure and flowed stably. Under the system's display, Baiye saw that its quality was clearly marked as excellent. Next, following the same method, Baiye first made the first bottle according to the pharmacist's technique, and then proceeded to operate according to his own understanding. After several hours of crafting, he produced a total of 10 bottles of life potion, 1 common, 3 excellent, and 6 superior. 12 bottles of magic potion, 1 common, 4 excellent, and 7 superior. 9 bottles of energy potion, 1 common, 3 excellent, and 5 superior. And 15 bottles of moongrass solution, 6 excellent, and 9 superior. But when he wanted to sell all the potions below the best quality to the trading company, he received bad news. It turns out that, in order to prevent players from having any problems after drinking potions made by certain alchemists, all potion bottles that are to be sold must have the alchemist's certificate number stamped on the bottom, so that if any problems do occur, the source can be accurately traced. If the medicine doesn't have a certificate number, that's fine too. The trading company accepts them privately since they employ a large number of pharmacists. They can just have them stamp it and that's it. However, the acquisition price was 3/5 lower than the selling price, and after deducting costs, Baiye only made less than 1/10 of the net profit. Baiye clicked his tongue. Although he knew that without the alchemist certificate, his potions might be subject to price gouging, he never expected the price gouging to be this ruthless. It seems that the price Ching Teng Alchemy paid for the moonlight grass solution was quite high. Perhaps the original owner wanted to research the formula for a new potion, which is why he paid a higher price. However, he was someone who never suffered a loss, and upon hearing the pitifully low acquisition price, he immediately and decisively rejected the deal. It's just a pharmacist's certificate, right? He can just take the exam. But when Baiye arrived at the pharmacist's guild by car, the words of the receptionist left him dumbfounded. The pharmacist exam for Nima only starts on the weekend, and today happens to be Monday. Baiye glanced at his game account, which showed only 4 gold coins, 22 silver coins, and 356 copper coins left, and clicked his tongue in self-deprecation. All right, I still have to take advantage of Su Li's absence and go on a dispatch mission. Otherwise, if she comes back and says the school needs to buy something, he'll have a hard time making ends meet if he doesn't sell her some nice things.
Hello, everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500-plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.